Or come down.
Okay. Our IT guy still here?
He just went upstairs. You need something?
I'm not connected. Oh, you're gonna hand that?
Yeah, it looks like your Wi-Fi.
Okay, got it. Okay, took a while. Thanks.
Same room.
Also, okay, so,
Yeah.
So scary picture we're looking at.
Recording it. I got
It's worse than the middle.
I like it. We all divide our ugliness up except for Rose down there.
Yeah.
He's gonna be.
Yeah, Council Berkeley's gonna be
Zoom in about
an hour and a half late.
Pick up some in space.
We actually replacement chairs, the other ones were,
Mayor Schultz.
everybody touched.
Do we have, there it is.
So the first one's for, well,
Moving things on here.
Matt,
Yeah.
City of St. Helens Public.
Yes.
Thank you.
Hi, Bill, can you hear us?
Hey, Bill, can you hear us?
Hey, Bill, you're on mute.
Yeah, speak up.
Hi, everybody.
Hey, we can hear you.
Nice to hear you too.
This is the video, that's. Patrick.
I'm gonna break this up.
Hey, Bill, if you want to go ahead and mute yourself, and then if you need to speak, you can go ahead and unmute.
Sounds great, thanks, I'll do it.
Patrick, are you on the line? Is somebody there at the 971-203-4719 number?
That is Patrick.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Okay. We'll wait for Kathy to start recording here. Good? Okay, we'll call this council work session to order. It is Wednesday, July 21st. The time is 1:01 p.m. We'll open it for visitor comments. Seeing any visitors in the audience? Do we have any visitors online? No. Okay. Okay, our first order of business is a length of service recognition for Jesse Templin. Come on up, Jesse. Jesse has 15 years with the city of St. Helens. And we appreciate all your hard work. See you around. Oh, we don't have nobody here to take a picture. Oh my gosh.
Take a selfie. Put a freeze on that camera.
Thank you,
There we
Jesse.
go.
Jesse's in our public works.
Hey, Rick, right here.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Right on. Thanks. Jesse.
Yeah, Doug, thank you. Congratulations, appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So Pat's here.
Okay, and our next length of a service award is Jamie Edwards, who works in our water department and has been with us for 5 years. Congratulations. Yep. All right, Matt.
Okay.
Thank you.
I forgot to mention your committee too.
Thank you.
Appreciate both of you. Okay. Our next item on the agenda is a request from Habitat for Humanity. Jennifer Anderson.
Speak up.
Never been told
Whoa.
that.
Okay, so I'm told we need to speak up a little bit, Jesse.
Okay.
So Jennifer, we'll have you go ahead and make your presentation.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to speak to you. I'm here to request help with our next project. We're going to be building a house on South 8th Street in Plymouth on the corner there. This will be a 3-bedroom house. So the total cost of the sidewalk fee in lieu is quite high, not only because Plymouth is connector street, we're on a corner, and then you've adopted the plan for Plymouth. So that came up to, I think, a little over $22,000 for the sidewalk fee in lieu. And with the FD season, my total request is $37,954. A bit higher than I usually ask for because of the fee in lieu. So I just wanted to kind of back up and talk a little bit about Habitat for Humanity because you do have a new city councilor with you. We started out as we're a grassroots organization. So a group of citizens got together and decided we wanted a Habitat for Humanity in Columbia County. And so we made a request to Habitat International. We are independently incorporated and we don't receive any funding from Habitat for Humanity International. We have to raise all of our own money. They do provide us with training and we can order some products through them, like appliances, because they have relationship with Whirlpool. Our funding sources, they come from the Restore, grants that we can get, individuals that donate, and we get some money back we hold some mortgages. So the basic idea of Habitat for Humanity is to pull together everybody in the community to help solve housing issues. And so we try to get as many volunteers, as many businesses, and the city involved in what we're doing. So the way we make the houses affordable is a 2-pronged approach. So we use volunteers in our construction. We try to keep the cost of construction down as much as possible. And we also work on the financing side. So part of the home is financed. What we've been doing is third-party financing for a portion of the home, and the families make payments just on that first mortgage. The difference between that and the appraised value is a mortgage that we carry, which is forgivable incrementally over the life of the loan. So families that are in these homes, they are earning equity at an accelerated rate. It's like a savings plan for the family, and it tends to have a generational impact on their wealth, pulls people out of poverty, and allows them to plan for the future. There's a significant increase in the number of families that are having kids go to college, pursue post-secondary education, tends to improve health of family members because they're not dealing with mold and those kinds of things. So the families that we help are between 35 and 60% of the median income. Most of the families that we help tend to be between 40 and 50 or below 50%, which is considered very low income. And they don't ever pay more than 30% of their gross income for their mortgage, which includes the taxes and insurance. So all Habitat homeowners, they do pay property taxes, so the city does get some money back from these homes. So the families that we have, we just closed our application process for this house. And I just wanted to tell you a little bit about the pool of applicants. The ones that fit into our income range are, most of these families that applied have members with disabilities. Some of the families do not have housing that meets the needs of the disabled family members. They cannot navigate the stairs. They do not have enough room for medical equipment. Unstable housing is very hard on autistic children, and we can have quite a few families with autistic children. So a lot of people rent, and there's nothing wrong with renting. And if you're in a higher income range, that can be stable housing. But for families in this income range, if there's an increase in rent, you know, they need to move somewhere else, so the rent is lower. Sometimes they're in homes that get sold, and so they end up, this situation ends up being unstable for them. So more about these applicants, many are dealing with substandard housing, black mold, electrical breaker that fails daily, a furnace that has not worked for years, lead paint, single pane windows that do not lock or keep out heat or cold. And one family's in a leaky RV that slugs get into their beds, and they have very little hot water and no heat. Some of them are in overcrowded. There's adults with children living with their parents, sleeping in the living room, large families crammed into small apartments with 3 people to a bedroom. Some are single mothers dealing with trauma, past abusive relationships, and struggling to provide a stable home for their children. So we hear the same phrases over and over again from these applicants. They want a stable place for their children. They're looking for a forever home. So I really would appreciate anything you can do to help us with this bill. There's been a dramatic increase in the cost of lumber. Really, it's going to be very difficult to budget for this project because we're really expecting a lot of extra expense. So the last request I made to the City Council was the April of 2019. We do have a lot in Vernonia, so our next house is going to be in Vernonia. We have some property that was donated in Rainier. So I really don't expect to make another request to City Council for a couple of years at least.
And how much was that dollar amount in lieu of fee? You mentioned it.
Yes, it is $22,541.25.
That's for the sidewalk, there's another fee added also, correct?
Yeah, the SDC fee, system development costs are $15,412.48. We do pay for the building permit ourselves, we never ask for a break on that.
Total is?
The total is
$37,000.
$37,954.
And you said the last time you asked for a request was in 2018. How much was it?
2019, that was April of 2019. At that time, that was before you adopted the plan. I believe the sidewalk fee was about $7,700 around there, and the SDCs were about the same.
So Matt, on our SDCs, we have to make sure they're whole, no matter what we do.
Correct. Legally, you can't forgive SDCs. This has been done in the past here at the city before I came with previous finance directors. I was here about 4 years or so before it was determined that no, we cannot just forgive SDCs, not have them paid or made whole in some way. So the city, county-wise, went back at least the time that I've been here, 4 years, and took money from the operations funds of water, sewer, streets, and storms to repay those SDCs for the past. And I think in their last request, did not forgive any SDCs, if I recall.
Oh, it's half.
Oh, it was half.
Yeah, the last project, we took down a house and divided the property in half. So when you take down a house, they figure that you pay the SDCs, but since we split the property in half, we owed basically the same amount as a single-family home, and you forgave half of that.
Well, we wouldn't have forgave it. That just
Yeah,
means maybe
I'm
you didn't
sorry.
have to pay it,
Yes,
but
you didn't have to pay half.
Public Works funds had to pay it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was actually, I think, a credit. but-
Yeah, and typically larger cities like Bend is a great example that they actually receive community development funds to help pay for these things. The city does not receive community development funds like larger cities to be able to have a pocket of money to forgive.
So I did make a request for ARPA funds, but it doesn't look like it's included in the proposed.
I have a question. How specific is your, and time sensitive is this request for? What's the latitude?
Well, I've already submitted the application for the building permit, and I'm expecting it in the next few weeks. So at that point, I've been told it would be good to know whether it's, because I'd have to pay it at that time.
So, John, with our riverfront connector plan and it falling within our urban renewal, could we go ahead and do that whole section of sidewalk? Because there's already a duplex that was built that has no sidewalk. And it's the same block. It's from 7th to 8th.
Yeah, I don't believe the project scope is quite that far. I know that Rachel's been looking into some other funding that might be applicable, and not to solve the problem that I asked it right now, but Rachel and you've been talking, or we'll talk soon.
Yeah, well, no, I was happy to catch Jennifer yesterday and we had a bit of conversation. I did reach out to Oregon Housing and Community Services. They have received a sizable chunk of money, over $400 million for housing uses. It appears currently that that's pretty restrictive and may not be a good fit for this project. Next on my list is to reach out to Habitat for Humanity Oregon and kind of think through where these ARPA investments, how they are rolling out across the state, and how local habitats can best benefit and leverage those funds.
So I guess here's what I'm saying is existing houses that are there right now. On the urban renewal, when we do that connector plan, we are gonna pay out of our urban renewal for those sidewalks in front of those houses, correct?
But we've got to make that decision at the board of urban renewal. We can't just take money out of
It
urban
falls in
renewal
the-
and say,
It falls in the scope of the work. I'm just.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yeah, urban renewal will pay for a portion of the funds, it won't pay for all of the project. So it'll be leveraged with other grants that come along,
Yes.
things of that nature.
Yes. And there's also a roundabout on 12th.
I'm gonna back up on my question one more time in terms of time sensitivity. The council isn't postured to do this at this time. What's your latitude? Can we put it off for 6 months? Can we put it off for a certain amount of time so that we can look at our budget in a more appropriate way? Then making a decision today would be hard for me.
Right.
Totally. I mean, no matter what comes in, okay? So, that's why I ask about your time. And you apply, can you apply for this 2 months from now, 3 months from now? Would that be fair, in a sense, to ask?
I need to pay these fees when I pick up the building permit. Unless you postpone the payment of them in some way, which is up to the city.
So can you, I guess I'll back up on this one more time.
Okay.
Can you delay the building permit for 2 or 3 months or 4 months? Can you delay the project? Because this coming to us all of a sudden without
Right.
really knowing puts us in a bind, as far
Right.
as I can see.
Yeah. I guess I could. I mean, it's, I would push it back into winter as far as building. That'd be ideal. I mean, I could pay for it and if you decided at some point to reimburse us for that, that would be my, preference. So, yeah, I do realize this is last minute. It's been, there was a canceled meeting and I didn't know what the fees were because I didn't have the plans yet, and so I apologize for that.
I'm gonna have our city planner come up for a moment here and just kind of speak a little bit, because he's got.
Yeah, just in the background, I wanted to be here just for the context of this one. So there's a couple different ways you can think about it. You know, the SDCs you have to reimburse. The sidewalk fee, if you recall, we put that in the code. That way, all these homes, sometimes it may not make sense or be practical to install sidewalk street improvements like that. So that fee goes into a pool, into the city pool for passing sidewalks in the city. Before, on the neighboring project, the council was okay with exempting the fee in lieu because it was a local fee, we control that. It doesn't have a bunch of strings attached per state law like SDCs do. The only difference is because of the Riverfront Connector, there's a lot more on that dinner plate now. It's not just a Salisbury steak, now it's a, turkey pot
And
pie.
they could potentially put a sidewalk that we may bust up if it's not within a foot of where our plan is.
Yeah, and I don't know if we would even, because what the code allows us to do, it requires us to, or it allows us, to require the sidewalk, or we can require the fee in lieu of, or kind of give them a choice. And in this case, I'm not sure if we would try to get just one section, because it probably makes sense for that to be done as a whole. But as far as precedent on the neighboring lot, because it was our local thing, the council was okay exempting it.
Well, that's why I was mentioning the sidewalks in particular, which are 22,000, because we usually try to help Habitat out any way we can.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to influence your decision, but just provide a little bit of background, especially because some of you weren't here before when this came up, just to understand where you were at the last request.
And she does have to pay for everything beforehand, otherwise the permit is not applicable. So, we'll kick it up for tonight and have some discussion on it.
Okay.
On the sidewalk part of it is what I hear us saying, not the SDCs, because we have to keep them whole, which is still pretty significant, 22,500 some odd cents. So,
Okay.
okay? Thank you, Jennifer.
Thanks.
Yep. I know I opened up with visitor comments, but I see that Carl Kaufman's here, and I want to give him a chance to, I think he's here to kind of speak on a project that we have in the works 3 years ago. Maybe longer. And, yeah, come on up, Carl.
Thank you.
Yep. So for the council, Councilor Chilton and Councilor Lopez, I think you might recall, maybe not, but I know it's just named up for sure that Carl approached us with the idea of using Connex boxes as homes, and he went to the state, and he's been dealing with the state for quite some time on getting them engineered, pre-engineered, and he started putting a foundation, and then I think it still took a little bit longer to get it pre-engineered at the state. And lo and behold, they're being set up right now over in the.
Can I pass something out?
Yeah.
I've brought some kind of before and afters, I guess. couple, three there, I think.
Yep. Yeah, I got 3. Yep, I got 4, actually.
You got 4? I'll take one back about that.
Yep, yep.
They still have the original copy.
You got a couple more pictures I do, and I'll jump out with the movie shot.
We can share one.
Okay, I'll get one back here then. So, I'm Carl Kaufman, and I just looked up today, I think it was July 14, 2017, that we got a preliminary approval.
Isn't that funny?
And I have to apologize, last month, I actually came down after work and waited until 7 o'clock and pulled the door open and realized nobody was here. It was a Zoom call, so I expected to come in and sort of share this, story, I guess, with you, because we were asking for an additional extension, and you kindly granted it, so thank you for that. I just felt like I owed that to you. So what you're looking at right now, truthfully, the pictures on top are what we're putting together right now. The ones at the bottom are the ones that we had proposed and intended to build. So I can tell you it's not all the state. It's financing, it's heavy in financing. So it's funny, I'm married to a gal who's a CPA, and she was convinced we could not get financing for shipping containers. Of course, I was completely confident there'd be no problem with this. So we ended up having to build 6 spec houses between then and now, and 3 in Cascade Locks and 3 in Oregon City, and sold them. And we've learned that they got sold, they got financed like a regular house, but it took quite an effort to get that done. So in the process, we've, of our 3 years, we're on building number 40 now, or project number 40, something like that. And we'll be actually be in the Street of Dreams in Portland. We're the comic relief for the Street of Dreams. We're moving out there next Tuesday. It'll be interesting. But what we've learned is how to build shipping containers into houses. You know, the last few years were really good to us. So what you can't tell by those pictures is the roof at one time was going to slope off over the decks and be caught in rains. And now we decided to forget all that and just put a roof over the top of it, slope it the other way. So we've completely changed it. Those shipping containers, there's pictures on our website that show roofs over them. We've cut those off, or patio covers over the porch, we cut those off. We changed a lot of stuff. And so I can tell you that I'm pretty buried in these now, but that's not the point. The point is, this has always been, in my mind, a pilot project to be able to find a way to work with government different than the way that we have been. And I just want to tell you how grateful I am that you guys have accommodated us to work up there. I'm also grateful that when I first came in and asked for the right to put 36 of them down the river, you said no. We've got an 8-plex maybe up there, so that's what we're doing now. And we're working on the next design. We don't think we'll repeat this exact one because we think we've figured out some things or learned some lessons during this, you know. But I'm basically here to kind of answer questions. We have not changed the interior of them. These are condominiums. Our application's into the state to get them done. We would be spray foaming the rest of them in the next couple of days, but it turns out there's no spray foam in the country, so we're looking for an alternate for that. And as you guys know, there's long lead on everything, so we've kind of gotten used to it. This is our first hit with open cell spray foam, which is a sound deadener for the walls that we had tested in order to be able to meet the SDC requirements for sound between multifamily units. So I don't have a lot to say other than I kind of just wanted to present myself, answer questions,
I appreciate you being here too, because I kind of mentioned it to John that there's a couple of counselors. Council Berkeley's on the phone. He's listening in right now. That weren't familiar with this project. And Councilor Topaz, were you familiar with this one?
I remember.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So and basically, just in case anybody would ask a counselor what's going on over there, that they would know. These are 1-bedroom. Going to be sellable units, 860 square foot, I do believe. That's
640.
640.
240-foot containers, 640 1-bedroom units. They're really nice. People come in, they like them. We initially thought we would build these completely, come over and set them up, and that would be that. What we learned is it doesn't work that well that way. So we already started the process to go to the state, and we just felt it was going to be cleaner for us to make a repeatable plan that we could just build over and over again. And there's certain elements of this that we'll use over and over again. But by and large, we've got containers that are wired, plumbed. The perimeter insulation is in, and once we put them there and get the utilities connected through them and around them and all that, put a roof over it, we'll be then working on the inside and finishing the side. our schedule had us literally spray foaming next week, but like I said, we just found out 2 days ago, there's no open cell spray foam, and we're checking other vendors and other options and all that, you know. But we think we'll be done with them in September. We think we'll have the site ready to go. If you came over now, you could see through, they're framed up, you could walk through them, you know, it's not a safe site yet, but in the next month or so, we'll start getting close.
Can you share the financials with the council and anyone who might be listening? I know that when someone will kind of come up and ask us and see what the parameters are for the cost of a condo and how all of this, how those financials can work. Because I remember that you gave us a very interesting financial breakdown of how the city could help and how and what a partnership would mean.
So, I'm gonna start that by saying what I probably said then, which was I'm completely convinced that government has the land to put affordable housing on. We just have to figure out how to do it differently than we have been. This is our first rodeo on this, so we're learning a heck of a lot, and I'll tell you financially, I'm buried in this project. It doesn't matter that, you know, the cost of lumber have quadrupled, or the cost of our containers has tripled, none of that really matters, but that's all happening. And it's changing the dynamics of all that. I just heard your conversation about SDC costs, and one of our limitations in our agreement was that we'd have a limit, but with that change, for example, we've said, well, we're just gonna pay those costs, because one of my goals was not to burden government, is to cover all of our costs other than the land and use the land. So we'll have to come back and visit that a little bit and clean that up. But all those affect our costing on it. So I came into hoping that we'd be building something and selling for maybe $125,000 or $150,000. We're probably looking like $185,000 to $200,000 now, you know. And that's if we try to absolutely get whole. I don't know that we'll actually do that. I honestly don't even know my cost anymore. This project, when we were building the foundation, I was doing the 500-mile walk across Spain called the Camino de Santiago. And I was talking to my son, Kevin, who was building the foundation here at home almost every night about the, you know, because I figured when we get back, we'll get that thing done and get it out there. Instead, it has sat in almost this condition in our yard, except for the revision we made for it for the last several years, you know, couple of years. So we've been super happy to get it out here and get rolling on this. I don't know if I answered your question completely,
Yes, you did.
but I kind of tried to.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for
On course, can you prefab these at another location to cut costs and move them to site and stack them in place?
I think so. There's been some modification in how we do it. I will tell you that the houses that we've done, when we move to the Street of Dreams next Tuesday, the house we'll put there will be 3 days away from being 100% done, right? But it's a confined house with a crawl space. You can get down below and you can connect up utilities, and you don't have to get through the roof ceiling of this and to get to the next. You know what I mean? It is a lot simpler when you do them smaller. So we think we make 1 and 2 bedroom units pretty darn good, and we're working on a design. I've got a property that I'll put a 10-plex on just to kind of prove that works. But I do think that triplexes, 2 bedroom on the bottom and 2 1-bedroom units on top is a good combination and consolidated. And again, we're into small. We're not tiny, but we're into small. We have a ton of people looking for these opportunities, you know. There's 2 things that I think make us affordable, but the primary one is small. I don't think we are really any better than, if we can chase and be the same price as lumber for the same price house, we feel like that's a good place to be, because we do believe that we're more durable. We think we're transportable. We've got various benefits besides cost, but if we can match cost, then I think that we're a better home.
I'm glad that you brought that question up, because my question was going to be, what's affordable in your mindset? So 200,000.
40,000 is affordable in my mindset, but that's gone.
These aren't really affordable
Well, see,
in your mindset.
It's so funny because people will ask, how do they hold the value? And I'll say, well, 40 years ago I bought a house for 20,000. That hasn't changed a bit. It's 40 years older, and the price of the house is now $411,000 on Zillow. So it's all in the land. I mean, I think it's just all on the land. We'll all compete for how we build cheaper on the land, but the land is the scarce commodity.
Well, that's what I was gonna see if Matt could break down a 180 over a 30-year loan. How many months is that?
1,100, 1,200, maybe with, depending on property taxes and.
Oh, yeah, we've kind of calculated it. We think we'll be all in at under 1,200.
Under 12?
Yeah.
And I know when I.
The benefit of good low interest rates, right?
And so that's right.
My first house.
What a one-bedroom rental is brand new.
We keep an eye on that. We have the Muckle builder, the water side, and so we have never raised rates there, but we know what those numbers are, you know, so we think, oh, it's. And the other thing I'll tell you is that, you know, I've read, you know, statistics that said that 60% of the homes needed in America are one-bedroom homes. And we get a lot of people coming, I want a 3-bedroom, I want a bigger house, but but we also sell a lot of smaller units. The ADU market is probably a third of our business as it stands right now, and I think it'll probably grow because the land available is in your kid's backyard or your parents' backyard now, you know.
You guys utilizing that ADU a lot in other cities?
We've done ADUs. We built in Oregon City, I mentioned Oregon City and Cascade Locks. We have worked in Catlin, we submitted all of our plans to the state of Washington. We have people up there, La Grande.
Oregon, any city over 10,000 has to adopt ADUs.
And they're really willing to do that. No.
My planner's back there, he's like,
yeah.
You got it.
That was 2001, I think, right?
All right, Carl, hey, we appreciate the update. I just wanted to bring you in, and Councilor Berkeley, were you able to hear all that information?
Thanks for letting me have some.
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Yes, I did, thank you.
Yep.
And just as a last note, again, I view this as a pilot project. It's something to prove, and I'll look forward to doing the second one, but I have got to just tip my hat to the Council of St. Helens for this opportunity, and it's a huge, huge deal. So.
All right, hey, we look forward to the ribbon cutting when it happens. We'll
have to buy some ribbon. See you guys.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay. Our next item is American Rescue Plan Act, ARP, spending recommendations, John and Rachel.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor.
Yep.
So this is the fund that's been, you've heard a lot about, and it started off less, and it's increased to about $3 million, and $3 million, and it's probably good to go over the eligible uses, talk about that. Rachel and I did not choreograph this presentation.
Would you like me up here, Mr.
Yes, come on up, Rachel.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you.
it's in your packet. There's a lot of, I think $3 million, what can you use it for, right? And there's eligible uses and there's ineligible uses, and the eligible uses are just for health expenditures, address negative economic impacts caused by the pandemic, replace public sector lost revenue, which is a big one for the city, provide premium pay for essential workers, that's also in our wheelhouse, and then probably foremost is investing in water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure. So we've come up with a proposed expenditure plan. There's 3 years to use this money. It'll come in 2 tranches. It'll be half this year, half the next year, but we have 3 years to use it all. And Rachel, you want to take it from there?
Sure, well, thank you. That's the story. We really wanted to line it up with our existing strategic plan and also addressing response to the COVID pandemic and recovery. I feel like we have learned a lot. We have learned a lot about the impact on families and communities, impacts on business, and kind of our own needs. I'll point to our IT needs that are on display in this room too. But we've really learned a lot about weak spots and what we can be doing strategically to strengthen our community. As John said, yes, we're looking to address negative impacts to families and community by investing heavily in the rec center programs. These are allowable. It's all about addressing educational disparities that are on display. Half of our city's in a qualified census tract, so investing in these programs for children, programs for families,
absolutely allowable and in response to the pandemic, and can really strengthen our community moving forward. Additionally, the library makerspace is another one that will help with recovery, re-engagement of those families, but also looking to the future, right? This is the direction. We need STEM-ready thinkers, STEAM-ready thinkers. So really feel good about the program investments there. Would like to address small business impacts, and we really saw a lot of that. I know John being on the Columbia Economic Team Board and seeing businesses that applied for assistance and just how broad those categories were. We really see strategic ways to strengthen businesses here. One is activation of the Main Street program, and the other is a small business center here serving Columbia County. For us to come in as a key partner now and early is going to make a big difference to get that off the ground. We did have quite a bit of lost revenue based on calculation, so would reinvest funds internally and replace that revenue. And then looking to the future of infrastructure, right? On the strategic plan, really front and center for me lately has been activating the industrial park. These funds can be used for water, sewer, and broadband. With the additional monies that are coming to the state, I'm hopeful that we will be able to come in and partner with state agencies and really leverage this money. If we can do the water, and if the congressional infrastructure package does come out that addresses roads, if we are able to make that investment in water and sewer, we're off to the races.
In the first phase of our industrial.
Absolutely. And this really moves the city forward in a number of ways and helps with pandemic recovery. There's so much potential and opportunity. I don't have to say that. And these are all items that are in our strategic plan currently. We're always looking to fund those items. It can move us forward quite a ways. Some of the other needs that we've been acutely aware of are IT needs. We would like to add an IT specialist here for all of our departments and facilities, particularly thinking about a new public safety facility, increased needs at the library, new recreation center. Like there's quite a body of work to be done, and coming from systems that are end of life and coming into the modern age. Just getting up to speed, especially with what we've learned over the pandemic. This is another great opportunity to move forward the broadband study. Business Oregon has gotten a state investment of $110 million. If we are in a ready position, it will benefit us. It could be very favorable for our move to broadband. So it is time to invest this money really strategically to look forward. Happy to answer questions.
Yeah, under this industrial business park, and I'm gonna combine words, there's a large toxic waste problem in front of the business park in the water. Can any of these funds be used for that?
Not that I'm aware of from a city standpoint. The monies that are coming to cities, I have not seen that as an eligible or recommended use. With all of the other funds that are out there and available, we'll certainly be looking for funds to address that.
So this specifically won't solve that or help on that problem?
So we did, and I wasn't part of this agreement, but the city has an agreement with Office Max Boise for that waterfront. We are not liable for any of that.
I want to clean it up now.
They are on the hook to do that, and DEQ is definitely involved already with that. So just so you know.
Do we have a timeline on that yet?
As long as they're making paper, there's.
Yeah, but it's keeping, well, I'd like to be there tomorrow
Well, I
to
know.
use the waterfront.
You asked that question,
Yeah.
and I'm telling you what I understood at the time. As long as they're making paper as an industry on that property, there's no cleanup that can start.
Oh, okay, that I did not know. That's the point I was talking.
That's rather.
I don't know about that. I wasn't here for that agreement, as far
There's an
as.
agreement.
John,
Understand.
fill us in a little bit?
Well, there's a relationship with Cascades as a tenant, and there's also Boise that sold property to the city. And the agreement with the city has an indemnification with Office Max, which is the parent company of Boise. So it's Boise, American Paper, then Office Max. And in that relationship, the city negotiated, or in that transaction, the city negotiated a indemnity agreement to indemnify all environmental claims. They would come in and clean up to the desired standard, which was a big lift for us, so we can go, there's industrial standards, there's residential standards. If you're building a park, they have to clean it up to a park. And that's, we purchased the uplands. We didn't purchase the in-water piece specifically because we didn't want the liability of that. But Office Max is in negotiations with DEQ on that settlement of that in-water component. So there's a couple of layers there, I suppose. But
Do we have a timeline when they're gonna start cleaning it up?
we have our DEQ liaison is communication. Rachel's been requesting that information just a couple days ago.
Oh, yes, I follow up frequently. An official DEQ staff report will be issued by the end of this calendar year. And I believe we will get next steps and more clarity on timeline.
One of the problems I see, and this is coming out of Portland, they dredged a part of the Willamette River, clean and everything, and it's resilted. And to re-dredge it, there's a 5-year paper mess, redoing what they've already done, even though they know what the answer is before they can start digging. That's why I was wondering when the time, and if they're making paper, could be forever.
Yeah, we can't force them to do that if they're making paper. That was my understanding
Okay.
at that time. It might have changed, I'm not certain.
I think we ought to get a good picture of what timelines are and who's in charge. 'Cause it kills us for expanding the possibilities of our industrial park if we can't go that direction.
Yeah, I believe Councilor Morton's referring to the operation and use agreement triggers, and as long as there's paper manufacturing, then it continues. That's kind of a separate track from the
Right.
in-water and the uplands and liability chain.
Cause I
It's
can't
all
get,
related, but-
I can't get anybody in there for a really neat thing if, the guy's halfway down the block, gonna block me for 5 years. That's kind of, how do I?
You're talking about the lagoon and the lagoon.
No, not even the lagoon, but the fact that the water next to it, I can't move tugs in to move stuff because they're fooling with the toxic waste underneath.
I see.
And
And it's all interconnected with paperwork.
And Counselor, if I can offer that this project, it's part of our Northwest Regional Economic Development Plan. It is also a priority for our Regional Solutions team. So, and I follow up very frequently.
Right, I know, it was a big hit when we couldn't get the tugboat guys in here.
I have 2 comments. So first, I thought that the Main Street project was already in play with funding. So I'm confused about why we'd be using this for that if we've already planned how we would fund Main Street.
Well, and I'll have Matt chime in on this as well. It is an eligible use and it's really directly related to recovery. So that was kind of our thinking.
Well, and in the agreement that the city did with the Main Street program, the city agreed to pay for a part-time staff person to help administer the program.
Right.
And so that's what these funds are intended to use, is so that we won't have to use money from our general fund or community development fund. We'll be able to use ARPA funds to pay for that part-time person.
So the money that we initially allocated for that, though, will go back to the general fund.
In the budget, we had already put these potential funds in there. Yeah.
The act was signed in March, so
We
we've been
knew the
thinking
funds were
about it.
coming, and so we did kind of specifically put stuff in the budget, assuming that we were gonna use it and you guys were gonna pass it, and it would all kind of fall together.
We thought it was gonna be 2.5, and it grew, which is better.
My second comment is broadband. Can we, it's been a while since we've discussed it, so what is the cost that the city needs to come up with? What would it look like for us to?
We had a presentation,
So-
it was fairly expensive, but.
Yeah, there's an organization that we've been working with called SNG Strategic Networks Groups, and they came in and did a initial study on top of a separate study that another company did on broadband and gave a presentation to City Council. We did an initial needs assessment and an initial survey among our community as far as St. Helens, Scappoose, and Columbia City, because our initial idea was, why don't we do it all together and be one big happy family? What we found from the survey was that it did not appear that Columbia City felt there was a need or that they were ready, and Scappoose did not choose to participate. So we are continuing on as St. Helens. This broadband study that is shown here at 80 grand is that next in-depth study. For SNG to move forward, they need to do kind of a needs assessment in full detail, and that means calling every single business, calling every school, to find out what type of service they did, who their providers are, what types of ISPs are available in the area, and a lot of detailed area that either myself or our IT department or Rachel or John just do not have the time to make 500 phone calls to every business or residents to say how much they would pay, or how much internet do you need at your house, and that kind of stuff. So this was an opportunity, as Rachel mentioned, it's in a available funds to be spent for broadband studies. This will get us to our hope at the end of this study for them to come back, give a report to you as council, and then it will be at the point of a go, no go, pretty much.
It was a hybrid system too, with about 5 miles of hardwire and then a couple towers.
There were a few different options that we could look at.
That we were looking at the time, that was most cost effective and would reach the most people.
Correct, and we know Columbia County, the county has an idea of what they want to do for broadband and building a broadband ring around the entire county. We've already spoken with a number of cities like Hillsborough that are willing to connect to us once we get to a certain point on a map. But there's a lot of possibilities and a lot of options, and this study should hopefully get the council to a go, no go. Here's what it's going to look like, and here's what we could do.
And so what is the exact figure that you're asking for?
To $80,000. And that was a quote from SNG to complete that study to get us to that point.
Yeah, just this past Monday, League of Oregon Cities had a conference on broadband. There was about 90 people on the call, and had some breakout discussions and talk about municipal broadband, these public-private partnerships, how they work. The initial work we've looked at, it looks fairly favorable, but there's the public-private and the business points and transaction issues that really need to be scrubbed to make sure that it's feasible, and the city's getting what it wants as a public provider, and the private entity getting its return on investment.
Matt, in terms of partnerships, and this guy crossed my mind, you were talking about other communities close by. Was Woodland and Ridgefield in Washington off limits because they're on the other side of the river, or because they're very close proximity?
I wouldn't say they're off limits. However, right now, I have never seen any interest of people dredging conduit under the Columbia River to get to the other side. It's going to have to go all the way up to Longview, Unova, or down Portland and I-5 and connect in Portland somewhere. My personal hope was that with OMEC and the PCC building up there, that there is a public broadband for universities and PCC in general that connect all the PCC campuses together. My hope was that they were going to build broadband to Scappoose, and then we could just tie into there, and we don't have to worry about the other 20 miles.
I know we had looked at the antenna being down there at the mill versus where they had it originally, because it just barely missed a little sliver of town, and if we brought it down at the mill, it would encompass the whole, and that big tower down there, not the smokestack, but the actual antenna tower.
And that goes, so the antenna idea goes back to the original study that was done first. SNG is more aligned to do direct to home with fiber right to your home instead of doing the satellites. The satellite could still be an option that we'll look at. But SNG is focused on the end user and getting to that final mile.
Thank you.
Yeah.
The other thing to realize is every month goes by, the ability through their technology covers a lot of these problems. So a few more months by, you'd be surprised what you'll be able to do.
Yeah.
I mean, it's getting better rather than worse.
And as Rachel mentioned, there's a lot of funds out there right now for projects that are in the ground, ready to go. And so if we have this study that outlines what the network is gonna be, what the partnership's gonna be, and we're shovel ready, we're more apt to getting those funds that we see out there.
Rachel, could you tell me more about the money for the rec program? What types of projects are they wanting to work on?
Sure, yes, and this was an area, as you know, we closed down recreation programs and had to lay off staff and all of that. So included in here is renovation and upgrade for the new building. Particular, we all think about HVAC now that we've had a global pandemic. But other things to get that building ready and family friendly. Also an admin assistant for the program. This, I believe the job description is up in your packet. But to help with scheduling, to really support Shauna. As we came through, we learned the impact of these programs on our community. She was out in the van with hotspots and games and to-go kits. So really to support the scheduling activity, as well as getting a program specialist. As the program grows, does fabulous work in partnership with the school district and in the new location, we can certainly see needs for expanded offerings. And a lot of this falls under the addressing educational disparities that we've learned about. Is that helpful? Okay.
I'm glad to see also that you, on your item description, that you linked, one of the first times I've seen this, and thank you for doing that. You linked the goal and of the strategic plan, goal 3, for the parks and rec as livable and safe community, our third goal. I really appreciate that because that gives reference to the reasons why, and if we want to dig a little deeper, we can go into what livable and safe community really means. And it does have a direct relationship with Parks and Rec. Thanks for including that.
Yeah, and you did kind of align a lot of these with our strategic plan.
Absolutely.
It was a group effort, and we're trying to find that balance between social
Yeah.
projects, physical projects, and the revenue replacement.
Councilor Berkeley, was that you? Want to comment?
Yeah. Yeah, hi, do you hear me?
Yep. Yes,
Do you hear me?
yes, we do. Can you hear me?
Okay, thank you. Sorry, yeah, it's me. I'm turning off West Union onto the pass. I'm heading your way. I just wanted to say about, just a few things about, the proposal. One, I would like us to consider, and I appreciate the great work that Rachel and staff has done to look at all these things. But I do think in terms of like the Main Street program, since it was, we kind of budgeted for it, to use those funds rather for some things that would have maybe a more immediate impact on some of our families. And I guess I'm responding to the request from Habitat for Humanity that not that we would use those funds specifically for their projects, but it does bring into question the needs of some of our families for adequate housing and for having adequate nutrition that I guess I'd like us to look at supporting, because yes, our recreation programs are very important. They certainly do support our youth and children, but if these children are also in housing situations where they're being, the challenges to meet their basic needs for, shelter and food and clothing are not being met. That might also be a reason why some children do not participate in our program. So I guess as we discuss the use of the funds, I would like to put more of a priority on trying to address some of our more immediate needs, in addition to the long-term things that have been addressed. So this is kind of my initial thoughts.
Thank you.
In reaction to that, again, you have the goal and strategic plan, and the goal is what Patrick was just addressing, is economic development. It's in that, Main Street is in that program for small businesses. So if we take anything out of Main Street and shift it to another area, it would be the livable and safe community, I would think, which would be goal 3. So we just have to shift that into a separate category, into that goal. Whether the staff looked at equalizing economic development and livability and safe community, along with effective and efficient organizations, which is goal 1. So as they looked at that, and it seems to me like it was a good division of dividing things up. So I guess what Patrick is saying is go back to the drawing board and see if you can divide that up in a more fair way to where there's more livable and safe community standards than there is economic development. That's the trade-off.
Right. I see the benefits of the economic development with small businesses, but also looking at things like nonprofits that we need to help out also. Well, in addition to the rec center though, I think that's Patrick's point, unless I'm misinterpreting him, but I don't think take away from Main Street, but maybe take a little bit more away from the rec center so that we can meet the needs of those children before they get to the rec center door.
May I just offer a comment? And I see that Councilor Berkeley has dropped off coming down Cornelius Pass. But we really crafted this with an awareness, however incomplete, of all of the money that's coming down. So there are gonna be huge investments in mental and behavioral health, for example, in housing assistance and indirect support to families. I really wanted to think this through from a city lens in terms of what we control, and also have conversations with nonprofit partners and state agencies around how do we best match up these investments to do the most good for our community.
Yes, and the city's not the only one getting these. I mean, there should be some bigger nonprofits getting some of this pool of money as well, and the county gets a big chunk as well.
Absolutely, and I'm very interested to follow up, particularly with our community action partner, as to how they're gonna be receiving and deploying state funds.
Exactly. So I just wanna make that clear that we're not the only.
Thank you, Rachel.
Yeah.
I like the team approach. So.
Yeah. Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Right.
The chief has asked.
Yeah, I can move him ahead because I can see we got a lot of money sitting back there. So, we're gonna jump ahead to our 6th item on our agenda, is a presentation on the city docks. Lieutenant Hogue and Corporal Key. One of you guys will have to pull up another chair.
I'll get the cushy one.
Good spot, you see that? I like it. All right, so, city docks are a hot topic.
Yes.
I can tell you that right now. There's been a vote somewhere for a month now.
Right.
And it's very frustrating to a lot of our citizens.
Yes, and it's been a hot topic really for the 23 years that I've worked here, you know, on and off at times. And so we kind of wanted to start over and, you know, take a look at things. And I think it's always a good idea to reevaluate what you've been doing and what's working and what isn't. And I think this time the idea we had was to talk to some other people that have been through this and maybe have had some successes in making some changes. This particular case, it was the Port of Brookings. And we went down there and spent a couple days with them, and they were really some nice people. And so shout out to Brookings there, that they were very accommodating and helping us out. And right away, we kind of told, you know, the history and some of the frustrations. They started smiling at each other and said, "Yeah, we remember that. You know, we remember when we had those frustrations too." And so, what we spent some time with them and kind of came back with a lot of things that we can improve on, but really three major things that I'm going to talk about today. And I'm just the opening act. Corporal King, he's of course the former Marine deputy, and so he has a lot of knowledge that he can bring and has brought, and I think he kind of even was familiar with some of the people down there that we met with. Interestingly though, we didn't meet with any police. We didn't meet with the Curry County Sheriff, we didn't meet with Brookings PD, and they were a little bit surprised that really the police were involved at all. So that kind of dovetails into some things we're going to talk about. So some of this will sound familiar, and talking to them, they really had a system where they were relying a lot on, of course, paid employees for the port, and a little bit on civilians. So there's a lot of businesses there, and it's certainly more complex there at the Port of Brookings than our city docks. But they found out that they had some ordinances that were either outdated or poorly written and were incredibly difficult to enforce, which again was familiar to us and some of the issues that we've had. That caused some issues with consistency and confusion with enforcement. Who enforces it? What legal rights do they have? And it really was clicking for us and sounded familiar. So the first thing that they commented on right away was our city was really heavy on time limits and how long you can be at the dock, how long you can't. But they felt that they had a lot more success when they started having much more say in who gets to their docks in the first place. And really what we've struggled with, I think, is how long have you been here? And we don't have continuous monitoring of the people that are tied up at our docks. And we really want to start at some point of, well, we got to issue a ticket. And so you have a violation level. So like a parking ticket on the side of the street, that's something that an officer has to witness. And most people, the frustration of the citizens usually say, well, I don't care about the tickets and all that. You guys handle that. I just want the boat to be gone. I just want the problem gone. And again, with the wording of the ordinances that we have, it's incredibly difficult to just go and untie a boat and tow it away. Just like someone that's illegally parked a vehicle, we can't just immediately make an arrest and immediately remove a vehicle. There's a process to it, and we gotta follow the rules. But one of the things that they really had was a lot of rules about what you can and can't do, and again, who ties up to your dock in the first place. One of the things that they have when a boat registers is that the boat has a current registration, that the boat has current insurance. And you adjust yourself in your seat a little bit because you think, well, geez, we're gonna ask everybody that. Well, it is a big question, but they really reported having a much more compliant process and much more success with it. And if you look at some of the issues that we've had, a boat is tied up at the dock and we can't find the owner. Well, because it was sold 3 owners ago, nobody has a current registration. Of course, it's not insured, it's tied up to our dock. What if we had more control that boat never was tied up in the first place? And they really opened up the door for us thinking about, again, who ties up to the city docks? Who do we want there? What kind of boats do we want there? Because when we don't, that's been our frustration is, well, what do we do now? Who do we call? What's the process? What's a law say we can do or limit us from doing? Next slide, please. So there's, like I said, there's really 3 things that they had that we really didn't. The first one was a kiosk which you register your boat. And so obviously it's a little bit well, a lot bigger there at the Port of Brookings, to where you have a lot of commercial fishermen, you have businesses, and you have RV camp, a camp spot for RVs and trailers. But make no mistake, the first thing you do when you get to the Port of Brookings is you stop in at the kiosk and you hit the selection and the drop down as far as what you want to do. And so we started thinking about how that would be effective here. So it does a couple of different things. You could have a drop down for camping at the island. I highly recommend you do it for anybody that ties up at the dock in the first place. And again, whether you want to have a small fee or whether you want to have no fee, and I realize that there could be, the spirit of wanting boaters to spend money downtown, you could have something of a 3-hour, 4-hour, 6-hour free tie it to the dock, but you still have to register and you still have to comply with the rules. You still have to have insurance. You still have to have a boat, and you have to register who you are so we can get a hold of you. The kiosk, what it did for them is it eliminated the need for a full-time employee, and that was going around with, you've seen the little envelopes with the $5 bills and all of that. They got rid of that. And so it allowed for better tracking of who's paid and who hasn't. It prints reports for you. So that's also what we've struggled with was, I haven't been here that long. Yes, you have, and we're asking citizens, hey, have you seen this boat? And it really, with something like this, we can make it a lot easier. So, and then I put again on the bottom there that you can make it as many drop-down features as you want, really. If you don't want to have the island on it, don't have it. If you want to have everybody that pays, if you want to have extended days, increase the price, you can certainly do that. Next one, please. And so what they told me about the kiosk is they were going off the top of their head, but they thought it was $15,000 initial and about $1,000 annual fee. They're making more money on it than we probably would because, again, they're, the commercial fishing and all the other aspects of it. But again, they were really harping on, man, we used to go and with notebooks, and we've talked about that too as staff. We used to have a locked 3-ring binder, I believe, down at the docks, and we would go and we'd write in it. And there's just a simpler way of doing a lot of this. And then I kind of just did an aerial photo here, and then I thought in my mind, kind of their RV park is a little bit like our Sand Island area. So it's split up a little bit, but again, if you wanted, you could kind of incorporate a lot of this, I believe, into not only mooring boats, temporary tie-ups, but also camping on the island. The third one was cameras, and they said this was, of course, a big game changer for them. This eliminated, along with the kiosk, any dispute about when people got there. And so we started thinking about, well, we've been free forever, and you're going to probably get that initial, I've never had to pay before, what's going on. Well, one of the things that these cameras do is that gives them a little bit of security too. And so somebody's tying up their boat, wants to go up, eat at a few restaurants, it's nice to know that it's under surveillance, for their protection as well. And we've had incidents at the docks where we've had some unfortunate accidents and things like that, to where it would be nice to be able to access this. But again, they were able to, so the harbor master, or port master or harbor master? Harbor master was able to log in remotely, and there's no dispute about when somebody got to the dock, whether or not they registered. Okay? And the good thing about the kiosk and the cameras, they don't take days off. They don't call in sick. And they're not as expensive as an employee. So we could make it as big as we want. We could not only do the docks, but we could do the Sand Island docks. We could do a little bit more of the waterfront. You could do the Sand Island common area for fireworks whatnot, this could be a big benefit to the Christmas ships as well. Next one. So really what they were, the benefits that they had was it took some time. And our time is a little bit more brief because they did a lot of the work for us. But they spent a lot of time going to different ports and getting that correct oversight, the correct wording for enforceable ordinances and things like that. The kiosk management and the installation of the cameras were both just game changers. And actually, while they were meeting with us, one of them kept looking up at the monitor, and he's constantly watching this. So another thing they talked about, next slide please, was having the right paperwork. And so some of this, there's two different things. So they didn't really have issues with the 10-foot John boat coming in off of the ocean, right? We do sometimes have a boat that isn't registered and it's really just kind of a piece of junk and we don't know what to do with this thing. Well, that's our challenge. Their challenge was they have huge commercial boats that perhaps break down, and it's more money to fix these boats for these captains than it is to even get it out of there. So there was a long process for them as far as excluding people and working with them, but there's a lot of paperwork associated to it. And so they gave us some examples of things that they use. Their parking violations, their exclusions, which of course are a breach of an agreement that when you initially docked your boat. So I thought those were pretty helpful, and I do have other paper examples that I could pass around later. So one of the things that when we drove back and talked about was, how do we as a city do this? And so I'm just making recommendations of things that, based upon what we learned and advice that they gave us, could work. We could create a new position. I don't know if we don't have a harbor, so we'd have to call it something, but manages all the property and enforcement of the docks and the island. We could expand an existing position, update the job description and the appropriate compensation. I don't know exactly what that would be. And this has been the big one, and this really goes back, Mayor, the 23 years that I've been here is that we've never had a boat that really was functional for certainly the police side of things. And this is the fear that we've had, and Chief Greenway's here obviously, and so I'm coming at you at all kind of different angles as far as liability and things like that. So in the past, we've done things as the police department when we take a call on the island, like a couple of officers get on a private citizen's boat and go over the island. Unacceptable. For the following reasons: you get over there, the boat won't start. You get over there, and we can't make it back. We get in a boat, they've had a couple of drinks, and now we've got a prisoner. And so if we go and we equate that to being on the road, and it would never be acceptable rationale to say we made an arrest, but we put him in a private citizen's vehicle and transported him to jail. We put him in the back of some guy's truck and had the officer sit with him, because that's really the equivalent of what you're doing. And those things really have us worried about. And it's good faith stuff. We've had great citizens. Some of our citizens have pulled over and we've been an altercation to help us out. And we're thankful for that. But when you're talking about responses and prisoner transports, the citizens and the police vehicles really don't mix. The other part is the time. So we're aware that there's a city barge, but again, there's a citizen that drives that, and normally is what I'm told, and that's great. I'm all for volunteers. I'm all for us getting help, but again, it doesn't really mix with what the police can sometimes do. So that's pretty much the main things that we went over there. We had an open mind definitely when we got there, and we didn't know what they'd say, but the main things that, the main takeaways that I think we can make some pretty easy improvements. Some of them would be, pretty strenuous, but some of the things, I think that, we could do here at SDC. So I wanted to kind of turn it over to Corporal King because he knows a lot more about the boating laws than I do, because I know there's been a lot of questions of why can't you do this? Why can't you just do that? And have any questions or?
So I will, I just have a couple of points to make to expand on the kiosk. I've spent most of my time as a swing shift officer, and we've been having these dock issues going down and checking them myself. And I've ran into kind of a gamut of different examples. The one that stuck with me is I ran into a sailboat, very nice sailboat, and during COVID, they were working remotely and had their daughter going to school remotely, and they were traveling up and down the Columbia. And we got a call from a citizen complaining this boat has been here for 7 days, they haven't left. They were in violation of our ordinance, but I walked down and talked to them, and they were a family who's doing the tour of the Columbia River, spending money in town, eating at our restaurants, and they thought the town was beautiful, and they just wanted to stay there for 7 days, and they were gonna leave on the weekend and continue to Astoria where their home is. I said, hey, I'm sorry, you're in violation of the ordinance, you have to leave, and the response was, well, we're just gonna go to Sand Island, and we were gonna spend the weekend there. You're still in violation of our ordinance because it says 72 hours, that's all you can stay. With a kiosk, you have the option, and we learned, I gave this example in Brookings, they said, no, you have the option to say, I wanna stay for this long. I'm traveling, I wanna stay for 7 days and use this transient moorage. I've paid up, I've paid for power. These folks had paid for power down there, but since we had a call, I asked them I gave them, hey, the next day, can you leave? Which they did. So it was unfortunate that because we were having issues with certain boaters, that it applied to people who were using transient docks like transient docks were absolutely intended to be, but they are in violation of the ordinance, and we got 2 or 3 calls on that boat. And so we went down and had a conversation with them about it, but with a better tracking system and with the ability for someone to stay longer with paying a fee or registering and meeting all of our requirements, you get to serve those people who want to stay more than 3 days. With a kiosk, right now, I couldn't walk down to the dock and tell you who's in violation. Yesterday, swing shift was busy. I didn't make it down there, so I've lost that 1 day in that 3-day window I have to check. So having an officer go down every single day is really difficult for our staff. With a kiosk, we know. I can walk down, if there's a kiosk or something like that where we make them register, I could walk down there right after this meeting, and if I don't see a tag on the boat is unauthorized. The statute says that an abandoned vessel means a vessel that has been left without authorization on public or private land, the waters of the state, or any other water. We as a city determine what unauthorized means per statute. We decide what it means when you're unauthorized. So we can't initiate the abandoned boat seizure procedure or tow a boat off of the docks until we have deemed it unauthorized, and we have to have a rule to make that happen. So if we have a boat that's down there that we think he's been here for 3 days and he's in the way, we want to tow him right now, we cannot do that. The boat has to be there, we have to declare it unauthorized, following whatever our ordinance or procedure is, and then we have to post it for 10 days in place with a pre-seizure notice. We have to send letters, certified letters, track down the owner, call the Marine Board. Once that 10-day pre-seizure notice is done, then we may tow the boat to another storage facility for 30 days before we destroy it. That's all by Marine Board rule, which I have in front of me. So that, I hope that answers if I go down there today and there's a boat parked in the way and we're having an event, can we pull it? The answer is no. It has to be abandoned by statute. However, if we have this rule where you must register, you must have insurance, and you must have a currently registered boat, if I walk down there tonight and there's a boat that expired in '99, it is now unauthorized. It fits the statute, and I can start the 10-day clock. I can say, hey, you have to leave. I'm not going to. Okay, I post the boat with a sticker, the clock starts. If they're not gone in 10 days, the Port of Brookings locks the boat to the dock. They seize it, tell the owner you have to go. If they don't go, they call the sheriff's office, and then they pull the boat and seize it. So, any questions on it? I've got another island thing to bring up. Any questions on how we seize abandoned boats, Councilor Moore?
Corporal King, is that, are you citing ORS Marine Board standards, or is that federal regulations, or where are you getting Where are you getting the stipulations from?
ORS 830908,
That's
subsection
all
1.
you need to say. Thank you. And then I'm really impressed with the kiosk situation, and especially down here on these docks. Sand Island, as you know, is leased, and in that leasing agreement, there is maintenance issues and other issues of security that the leasee is responsible for, not us. And so that's just, for you to know. But I love what you're saying about the kiosk. I think that's an excellent way to go. I just appreciate your expanding, getting down to Brookings, seeing how they do it, because they were looking around and they saw how other people did it, and I think that's a very smart way to proceed.
Now we're gonna hear the issue of the island, right?
Okay, yes,
So about this.
we have an enforcement issue on Sand Island. I've worked at St. Helens PD since 2007, and as Lieutenant Hogue said, this has always been a problem. We don't have a way to get over there. And the bigger issue is, even if we have a way to get over there right now, we don't have the training. Okay, background on me, I was a Marine deputy for 6 years. I instructed at the Oregon State Marine Academy every single one of those years. I was a boat instructor, a pool instructor. I've been to Swiftwater Rescue Base in advance, so I know a lot about the water, for lack of a better term. And I will, and the council, most of you know who boat around here, this stretch of waterway right down here is one of the most dangerous in the state. It is a very, very, very bad place to go in the water. Our docks are one of the most dangerous places in the state, as we know from experience. If you go in the water there, it's very, very bad. That's why we don't allow swimming. So it's a very dangerous place to put people. And when you put an officer in a boat in 75 pounds of gear with no water training and no personal flotation device, it's kind of a recipe for disaster. For years, we have had to do that. We've had to hop on a citizen's boat with no life jackets and just kind of hope it all works out. And after my time in the water in those trainings, when I came back to St. Helens PD, I said we should not do that. I've been in the water in this gear, and it's not fun. So we really, to do this right, as Lieutenant Hogue said, I wouldn't hop in the passenger seat of somebody's Ford pickup and go to a domestic call right now, because it wouldn't do that. It's unacceptable. There's a lot of liability and there's a lot of dangers, and we put other people's lives at risk when we do that. To get there properly, we need a boat that the police department owns and trains on and outfits. To train an officer to properly drive a boat and stay safe in the water, it's 40 hours of uninterrupted training. 40 hours. The Marine Academy is 2 weeks. I've done the numbers and have a training syllabus. If I'm to train our officers on it, I can get it down to 40 hours because we're not going out and writing tickets or arresting drunk boaters. We just need to get over there, know what to do if you get in the water, know what to do if somebody else in the water, know how to dock a boat, know how to put it away, start it, things like that. So it's 40 hours of training, so it's a very large investment. Without this training and the equipment, right now our Sand Island response protocol is we only respond to active life-threatening emergencies on the island. We have had numerous calls, hey, there's a guy in this campsite, he won't pay. We can't respond to that. It's difficult for me to tell my officers on my shift, hey, I want you to hop on that boat and go tell that guy to go. There's no boat. The sheriff's office is going to call out Marine Patrol from home for that. If Marine Patrol's on, they're often tied up on an emergency. And even if Marine Patrol's on and I'm not here to go with them, we can't really put an officer on their boat because they have no training if they go in the water. I can go, and I have with them because I have the training, but I'm not here every day. So it's tough to put a new officer on the boat and say, hey, let's go, because again, they're in trouble if they get in the water. So to really do this right, we have a lot of hurdles. So until we do, we're basically stuck. We were dispatched to a fight over there the other night. We could not respond. We didn't have, Marine Patrol was off duty. We didn't have a way to respond. The situation solved itself, but there was injuries later that were reported the next day. But we didn't have a way to go. If we did and had the proper training, it was my and the sergeant's call to make to decide we weren't going. I didn't feel comfortable with the crew that was on shift with no training going in the dark across the river You've been out there, Mayor Scholl, a lot. I didn't feel comfortable with that, so we opted not to go. With the proper training, that call would have been different. I would have said, yeah, let's go find out what's happening with the fight. But
Well, and then, not to cut you off, but then what do you do when you get there, and if you make an arrest, then what?
exactly, we can't put, and so there is a case, and I'll close with this. There's a case that we taught at the Marine Academy, and forgive me, I don't remember what state it was. A state trooper.
Ozark.
Was it Ozarks? Thank you. Lake of the Ozarks. A state trooper put a prisoner on a boat, and due to his lack of proper training, he did not properly secure the prisoner in a life vest. That prisoner jumped off the boat and perished. That trooper was criminally liable for that act. Criminally liable, because just didn't secure the life jacket properly. Our officers now do not know how to put a life jacket on a handcuffed person. If you do it wrong and they go in, the second we have somebody in handcuffs, they're our responsibility. So it's a very stressful thing for our staff. So any questions about that?
Are you at all pitching a proposal to get a boat? It's, I mean,
Well,
that's
it's-
not my
it's-
intent right now, but
it's-
you've really educated the council on the merits of, from where I stand, of not getting a marine craft and not asking the police to involve themselves to go over and do those things at this point. Okay, and so that's what I'm hearing there. We're really hearing a lot of good merits about the kiosk and the city dock here. Am I off?
No, you're not, because it kind of is a little bit all or nothing. And I think that was some of the confusion that the Port of Brookings had is again, we didn't talk to the police. Now, there's a police component potentially when you have something that escalates into a trespass, then yes, they would call, but they're calling the non-emergency line and getting who they get. So yes, if it is the police that are enforcing all of this, we need the proper tools to do it. If it's not the police, then, we don't have much of a say in all of that, but.
One follow-up
Yeah.
question. I know that Columbia County has a Marine Patrol and so does the state. Are you in collaboration, or is the city in collaboration in any kind of 911 call with the county or with the state to dispatch a unit to go over to?
Councilor, I can speak to that, because I made a decision about this. So, but just to your point, we're talking apples and oranges. Kiosk at the docks, just so to clarify, this is not a police, we're delving into the legislative session of our government. We're executive branch, we have judicial sitting back here.
Right.
So, but the frustration level of your police department is that we take the brunt of the citizens' complaints, just like Dustin and Joe said. Why can't we just tow that boat? So we're trying to explain to everybody, because there's a lot of miscommunication and everything. So the reality is that council or the city's gonna have to make a decision on how they wanna police or how they wanna legislate the docks, and then call us when needed. That's the one point. I'm in favor of the kiosk because it frees up man hours and everything else. At a minimum, it should not be the police department coming up with this process. Whether Parks and Recs, whether you take the new person you're hiring, that's not my decision. The Sand Island issue, because of the issues that we have and the potential life safety issues, the standing order is if there's a call on Sand Island, we have to respond. The on-duty St. Helens police officers have been directed to call the county sheriffs to respond. If they cannot respond, which they're short-staffed as well, if the Marine Deputy, then CCOM will then summon the state police if they can respond. I will be completely transparent here and say they're 9 times out of 10, they're not gonna be able to respond.
That's right.
Because we have an agreement, an IGA with the county sheriffs that we entered in 2018 in the fall, to use their boat, Dustin King's our only certified boat operator in Marine. If he's available to respond off duty, if he's not working, then he can respond, we can get over there. We are putting our city at an extreme liability risk by having a city park that is not properly policed. I have to say that, okay? We're not asking for a boat right now, we're just bringing it to your attention because we have a lot of areas that we wanna address. But I will tell you that that's a fact. And there's a lot of concerns for us. If we get over there and we can't get back, the majority of our calls, our officers are busy happen on the mainland, not to be funny, but that's what we call it, and we can't afford to have our officers not be able to respond in our city. So, but yes, Counselor, not to interrupt, but, so we are talking about two things. They brought it up because it's a factor. It's, you know, like the mayor knows that we had 3 or 4 calls to Sand Island, we weren't able to respond. We cannot put our officers on a boat that aren't trained, aren't certified. We don't have life vests for anybody we take into custody. And we are really exposing ourselves to a liability.
And that's what I explained to the
Yes.
people who notified me of why are the officers required that we transport the people in the confrontation over.
Right. We're regulated. There are more regulations in the police world than people can fathom. And we are guided. Liability and people's rights, and just like towing a boat, it's just frustrating for all of us. I mean, I feel everybody's frustration.
There's Ron, I think Ron Carlson, is that county? Is that his name? Carlson?
Larson.
And that's him, and then you have 2 state Marine who are required to babysit right now, Sully's Island, the entire summer. That's where our Marine division is at. I asked for their assistance for the 4th of July. The county did come out. The state said we are gonna reach out. They reached out to the supervisor. The supervisor called me and said, unfortunately, we cannot. But if you get in a predicament, of course, we'll be there, but we can't just come down and patrol the falls.
Right. We have, Dustin has liaisons with the Columbia River Fire Rescue, even Cowlitz County and Clark County across the river at Ridgefield, where they moor their boats at for the 4th. So we did our own. We had the sheriff's department have one deputy.
But literally, they would love to have been down here just
for the fireworks.
floating along for the fireworks, but they literally, Justin and I forget the other guy's name, had to be on those islands.
So as a recommendation from Lieutenant and the Corporal and your chief, we recommend that you go with the kiosk automated system. I would, hopefully get it into place before the Christmas shifts, because, John and I took a brunt of the anger of the Christmas shifts because the homeless boaters, is what they are there right now. And without having we can't have a citizen issue a citation, unless they get the background and all the other things associated with it and do a citizen's arrest. We just can't do that. We have no solid foundation to link everything from the time they arrive to the time. And a citation, it's just a citation. It doesn't mean the boat's gonna go away. I mean, it's still there. So I think this kiosk is the way to go. I think that if we move on it and it'll free up some resources, and again, we send an officer down there when available every shift. I guarantee you the citizens would want that officer in their neighborhood preventing crime other than checking on something, a homeless voter that we really can't enforce. We have to give them 10 days notice. I'm not skirting our responsibility. I'm just saying we have to prioritize with our limited resources on our agency.
So with the kiosk, we still have to wait 10 days? Is that what I heard you say?
Once it's declared unauthorized, you have to wait 10 days, and it's just how we declare it unauthorized is we gotta be able to prove it later.
If we have a private entity enforcing that, like somebody from Sand Island, an employee?
Towing the boat themselves?
No, and enforcing it, looking at, going to read the kiosk to see who's in violation, who's not.
Yeah, it doesn't matter who does that, because then that's a written record that we can then rely on and prove. So it's like a parking meter ticket.
Is there any way to write in that agreement that they signed up that if found in a spot that needs to be moved immediately, that'll be in a storage spot of the city, a dock?
That I'm not sure, but
I would like to see in there some sort of, the city has a right to put your boat down at the inside of Dock A.
Docks.
Dock A.
I'm not an expert on it, but I don't see why with those kiosks, you can make anything you want on them.
Chief?
Yes, sir.
And one of the things then the council is asked to do or challenged to do in this situation is come up with an ordinance or a resolution that identifies our methodology and what we're doing down there, like if we saw the postings and those kinds of things. I really like what you said about if someone is there 3 days, and if it's on a kiosk, they can extend for others. But I always kind of thought that 3 or 4 days free would be a good thing. Anything additional would be $20 a night or whatever, which other municipalities are paying for. But if we had that by ordinance, it seems to me like it could function. I'm really not sure how the Marine Board, since they paid for these docks, how that could be justifiable with the Marine Board. But I do see that if it's extended, it's almost like paying a ticket or anything else, that somebody chooses to do that, well, they choose to do it. And I kind of like that idea. So, what's $20 a night compared to going out in the middle of the river and dropping anchor and have to dinghy on in and back out? So I do like the flexibility of that. It's going to cost a little, but for people who want to do that, I see it as a good option. And I also see that we could have an action item on any resolution or ordinance in short order. The only thing we're lacking right now is the cost of doing this, as far as I'm concerned. I don't know about the rest of the council, but I've got, okay, if we do that right now, how much is this going to cost us? Where's the money going to come from? How are we going to do it?
Well, we don't give them the first 3 days free, and we pay for it with the fee of charging them to register their boat. And we get it back in the long run.
One of the problems we're causing at St. Helens is we're a seaport, and there's certain etiquette of a seaport. There must be, and typically if you were in trouble and you're a transient, you should be allowed at the dock. Tradition around the world. 2, we should have a definite set of rules which we do not have. That's our job. The police may want to give us how we should write the rules, but that's our job. One of the rules for registration is you have a man or a kiosk. That's part of our job to do it. The next question, this goes to safety. How many miles of seafront or waterfront do we have in this town? We would have to look at. That's around Sand Island, all the way down to the slough. If we've got to cover, because we can't, as you've explained, the Marine contingent from the state police can't get here, the fire department can't get here, the Coast Guard can't get here in a reasonable time to save anything. So we have a physical problem we're going to need equipment for. We are a seaport, let's face it, like a seaport. We need some definite rules. There's always trash on the river, and there's got to be a way to identify it and keep it away. That's our job.
Good comment.
Why, there's really no discussion. Let's get it done.
Good comment.
Well, I've talked about that, and we have the DSL rights to the whole waterfront, and there should be a harbor master here, like they were talking about that they have down there in Brookings.
Brookings, yeah.
Pretty much every harbor in the world does. In fact, I think you met a group of them from the Pacific Rim.
Yeah.
And they had some real horsepower to control what happened in their harbor. If we had a fire here, there's no reason why we can't move every boat out of the area so it doesn't spread. Can we do that right now legally? I don't know. But at one moment, there has to be rules like that. Let's act like a seaport. And some of these rules are going to be mean, no problem. But we need a rule written down so we can do it.
Get it going.
By the way, a quick solution can always get the fireboat or whatever the next day. Just handcuff your prisoner to a tree, he's safe over there, and pick him up the next day when you got all your people.
Okay, I was with you.
That goes to swimming and safety.
Councilor Berkeley, you have a comment?
No, there would be some civil rights issues, I think, liability regarding that.
The tree's okay.
But no, I.
Green state.
Sorry about, I passed, I lost you, but came back, but I was able to come in your presentation. And thank you. It was very informative, especially the issues concerning enforcement on Sand Island, but especially on the docks. So thank you for giving us some good information. And I agree, we need to, as a council, make some decisions about what the rules are and get the heat off of our law enforcement officers so they can focus their efforts, already stretched efforts, on other things.
Question for you. If we decided that we wanted to vote in the future, will we get the portion of the the Slowick fine if we,
No, those funds go just like the general fund, just like every other traffic citation does in the state.
Mayor, where there's this federal money floating around for all kinds of funny things, we ought to have Rachel check and see what there is in marine safety. It may be the piece of equipment is a boat with a motor and some other details on it.
Yeah, the Port of Brookings, they said they weren't entitled to some of the grants we would be since they were at work, and they mentioned that, hey, you may, be able to get a boat for all they know, so.
go for it, Rachel.
Get hold of me, I've done that before, and I'll move in the right direction.
I think that I agree with the
St. Helens
kiosk.
Police Department for Marine Division.
Let's move on.
I agree with the kiosk, and I think it's something that we need to move forward with, but I am a little bit concerned about the Sand Island issue. I don't think we've really settled that, and I'm interested to hear what Doug said about that it is the lease holder's responsibility to provide security on the island, so I'm curious about that. And
That was not part of the discussion. That was actually in a discussion with Sand Island, is that they would transport our officers over there originally. Was they would always have 24-hour shuttle service over to the island because they have our boat and they also had another boat. But what we find out from our officers, that was the discussion.
Yeah, but there's.
It was on video, and it was, and I know because I talked to Tony about it.
I understand that.
That's where I'm actually getting my information from, is the marina, and they're confused because they're wondering why their staff are reliable to bring over two individuals who are in a brawl, that are not seeing eye to eye anyhow, to load them onto a barge and bring them over to talk to our officers. This was from Tony's.
But yet we didn't consult with our officers before we decided that we would ship our officers on private boats across to the island with knowing that they have all these safety concerns and stuff. So that's concerning too.
It was, yeah. Yep, I don't even think,
I didn't even know that was an agreement, that we agreed to
The
that.
discussion when he was interim at the time, I think, and it's been that long ago since we started this, kind of like Carl Kaufman deal.
Well, it doesn't sound like a good solution, so maybe we need to go back to the drawing board on that one.
Well, we talked at length before we signed Brad into that decision to be the leasing on Sand Island. A lot of this was talked about then, and it was my understanding that that was his responsibility. Now, I'm not certain if that's directly into the agreement or how it reads, but if there's any kinds of problems over there, Brad accepts that responsibility. So, he accepts that responsibility, he gets in trouble, he calls the police, right?
Understandable, we want to help, but we just got certain guidelines, we can't.
Because it is a city park, and I'm looking at Bill on the TV there, and I would say that it is ultimately up to the city of St. Helens, because it is a city park, to police the island.
Correct.
Yeah, with McCormick Park, I mean, we've had caretakers there, but they didn't do the enforcement portion of it.
So then it brings us to a bigger discussion.
Yes.
Will we have to train our officers in swiftwater rescue, a 40-hour class in operating a boat, owning a boat?
Right.
All the regulations that go along with it, and how do we get these officers? It's a bigger picture, Mayor, and,
It just has to be done. As you point out, that river's a mean river. And it gets nasty and mean very quick. And we have people who wander down the road and want to get in there, and we're gonna have to get them out. So the people who are gonna get in trouble are really gonna get in trouble, and we need really well-trained people to get them out of trouble. That's just the way it is. That's one of the things we've just gotta do, like it or not.
I think Matt said he wouldn't mind being the harbor master.
That's what I heard too.
So let me ask you this.
Got the checkbook.
If we were to hire a harbor master, and he assumed the $2 million liability insurance, coincide with the city, because it's a city, but he's his boat is part of the harbor master agreement with the city. then will we be covered because it would have the alignment with the city?
To be an agent of the city, so to speak.
Yes,
Like a
kind
city-
of.
I have to defer to Dustin and the marine laws on
It's kind
that.
of the same thing as us jumping on the barge.
Same?
Yeah, it's not, because when we're doing a law enforcement function, there's certain things that happen that you want a law enforcement officer to pilot the boat.
Yep.
And that person has been trained to our policy and our standards, has gone through a background check, because that, whomever's on a boat with a prisoner transport is gonna be subject
You
to.
can train me right now.
No,
He could,
You have to go through a
he
training
could
course.
train me, he's done it before, he could train me in 40 hours. And then I could, with my boat, be legally with a 20-foot Thunderjet, take you guys over there.
The issue would be, we're transporting someone in a boat and there's officer safety concerns. So if you're not a uniformed police officer and that person becomes combative, then you're in danger.
Okay?
The boat's in danger, because if that person is able to, disarm an officer or subdue an officer, and it's just the boat driver and the officer going, now you're over there with, you see where I'm going? Like, if you're going to have officers transporting prisoners, you want a uniformed, sworn, background checked, CJIS cleared officer, because you're also subject to sensitive information. Like when we transport a prisoner in the car, we don't let civilians ride in the car with us to have access to all that sensitive information that's being exchanged, because there's certain things that we cannot publicly release.
Yeah.
I like the idea of getting one of Carl's condos over there just for someone to cool out for a little bit. I mean, until all
Can we
all
put a
heads
jail
are
on
kind
the
of
island?
like cooled down and
Amy,
bring them
can we
over
put
one
a
at a
jail,
time.
Amy, can we put a jail on the island and you could just
Shut up.
Only if,
zoom over and say, okay?
I'm sorry. We're sideways, I'm sorry.
All right, yeah.
yeah, right.
This is up to us, and this is like, now it seems a little bit more muddier. Bill, this seems a little muddy. Like, it's gonna be very complex and.
So, Mr. Mayor, my input would be, if I may, so it sounds like you've identified a problem that has a couple various issues. And with those, that's some liability concerns. And I think whatever you come up with, whichever course of action is going to have some level of success in addressing liability, and you may be able to do something like hiring a harbor master, as you have suggested, but it doesn't sound like that gets to your police issue. So whatever you do, I think is going to require more analysis and options, and we need to make sure that before the council makes any decision that it involves the input of CIS, the city's insurer, to make sure that whatever course you take is not going to create more exposure for the city. They can provide us with some level of assistance and maybe help us with analysis, but I think there's a need for more analysis based on what the police department has brought to you today.
So Bill, if we phase this and go ahead with the kiosk first, do you see any issues with the kiosk as it was explained to us?
Now, the kiosk sounds like it's a control mechanism to provide the city with the first phase of information so you can get a better understanding of the problem and to get some baseline information for how long people are staying. I would caution, though, that I'm hearing that there's a homeless piece of this. And as you're all aware, that there are there are lawsuits related to homeless conditions, and we have to be extremely sensitive to what we might do to take possession of the homeless individual's habitat. And if the boat that we're talking about might be left behind because a homeless person was there but then left it, we want to get CIS's input. But I think beginning with the kiosk makes really good sense, and it could provide you with sufficient time to then evaluate what are your dollar and cents issues for addressing the need that the police department has identified for proper ownership or control of a boat so that they can do their job. I'm very concerned about the liability issues that the police department has identified, because it sounds like the city has been very fortunate not to have the most awful set of facts and result from not being able to properly respond. So there's definitely issues.
Great. Good question.
So moving forward, I'm gonna task Corporal King with looking at the Sand Island CIS liaison to find out as far as the vote. We'll take that portion if that's okay with council, and then the kiosks, we'll kind of serve that back to you guys. And
I just paid my insurance and my my mortgage slip, and we can use my boat anytime, okay?
If you have any input to the council for rules, regulations, anything that needs to be changed, we need to hear about that from you folks as well, so that we can respond. So we can ask our staff to do that, and then it'd be between you and the staff too.
it could be as simple as taking the existing kiosk for water and electricity behind the courthouse
Yeah.
and either upgrading it. I don't know. I'm not an expert in that field. That's Mohammed. So he's on trying to everything away from the city. So anyway, but we'll move forward with our portion, and we'll come back at a later date, at your pleasure, and we'll be able to present again if that's okay.
Thank you to you and Logan.
Thank you guys, great job.
Thank you.
All right. So our next item, coming back to number 4, is our annual report from our city auditor. Auditor PC. Being back there. I know this has been a long meeting, and
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
So just quick introduction, I'm Connor Delaney, Senior Auditor in charge of field work for the city's 2020 financial audit. I think I'll just kind of provide a quick overview of what the audit process is and kind of what we do, what it exactly is we do and the purpose of it. So the main purpose of the audit is for us to provide an opinion on the city's financial statements. And the opinion that we're shooting for is to say that those financial statements are accurately reported in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. And also that all auditing standards were followed, and as well as some of the Oregon municipal audit law and related administrative rules. That's basically the budget mainly. Also some other items in terms of insurance and highway funds. We look at some specific things with that. But, so that's for the general purpose. And the way that we develop our opinion is we start off by updating our understanding of the finance department's policies and procedures and kind of how they process everything and what kind of accounts they have. We do basically do a walkthrough every year and make sure we're up to date on that. And then from that point, we start sampling transactions. We look at payroll, credit card expenses, various sample of transactions that are in the financial report, receipts, things like that. And after we kind of put all those things together, and after we review the individual transactions and controls that were in place, we're able to develop our opinion on the financial statements. In terms of the results of the audit for 2020, we have provided what's called an unmodified opinion, and that opinion letter is on page 1 of the financial report itself. So the unmodified opinion basically says that the financial statements were appropriately stated in accordance with GAAP. It's a clean opinion. It's the highest level opinion that we can provide. The statement of standards report, it's at kind of the end of the report. There was one instance where the actual expenditures exceeded appropriations. That's noted on page 66, and I think that reference is actually a separate page. I believe it was the Visitor and Tourism Fund overspent their initial budget, but not an unusual thing, but it's just something that we're required to report on. And then we also issued a management letter noting a deficiency of internal control that was more significant that we had to notify management about, and it was in regard to the bank reconciliations. I think the issue in general was that it took longer than kind of going back to the fact that management adopted an new software program for finance. It kind of took longer to adopt that, and then there were some initial errors in the bank reconciliations that had to go back and looked at and adjusted. And it took, so basically until May of 2021 was when the final bank reconciliations for June 30, 2020 were completed. And then we could, from that point, proceed and finish the audit. So it appears that the processes in place have been corrected, and going forward, it's good to go. It's just that since it's basically a risk involving cash was there, and since the cash accounts are basically the accounts with the highest volume of transactions flowing through them, it just increased the risk that an error could have occurred and gone unnoticed. We don't believe that happened because management went back and we reviewed everything, but it just increased the risk during the year. So we had to note that in the management letter. In terms of other information that's in the letter to the governing body, there's some informational items on upcoming governmental accounting standards and things like that. If anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to go over those. Other than that, we just also had a best practice recommendation on just the kind of the processes for the year-end balance sheet accruals. In general, we like to see, if possible, all the financial accounts in the balance sheet reconciled within 3 months of the end of the fiscal year, just to implement appropriate controls over the financials. 2020 was a tough year, of course, and then on top of that, you put the software conversion on it. It added a lot of challenges to 2020. So I don't anticipate it really being an issue going forward, but just kind of our recommendation would be to put some policies and procedures in place to make sure, kind of a checklist of all the different balance sheet accounts, make sure that those are reconciled within a specific period of time after the year end, and then they're ready to go for audit in advance of the audit even beginning, basically. So those were our recommendations. If anyone has any questions on those or anything in the actual financial report itself, I'd be happy to take any questions you guys have.
I don't have any questions, but I do have a comment. So in the Visitor and Tourism Fund on page 29, there's a negative balance of $132,000, is that correct?
So it's page 20. So which specific report were you referencing? I guess I'm getting something different on page 20.
C6?
It's the tourism one that you were talking about.
Visitor and Tourism Fund.
Yeah. Sorry.
You're talking about 29 in the packet, so it would be.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, because I was just looking at the actual report.
Oh. 6A.
Gotcha.
6A.
Yeah, so 132,643 is the negative ending fund balance. Yes, correct.
Okay. Matt, can you speak to that a little bit? Why is that negative?
Yeah, there's a few, I don't want to say opportunities, however, with how tourism is operated on an event basis versus how the city operates on a fiscal year basis can lead to these issues. And the councils should be aware that a few years ago, we had to do a $240,000 interfund loan to the Visitor Tourism Fund, and that was done on June 30th, and then July 1st was when it was paid back, so it was just a budgeting issue. We have that same issue again here. I think there are some opportunities within visitor and tourism that we've discussed internally with John, and I believe we have a plan moving forward to create a committee to help oversee as a group and assist E2C and the production company as well as internal staff on some of the procedures and processes and how expenses and revenues are reported within visitor and tourism funds. So I would expect that that committee will meet. We're going to start meeting weekly to talk about what issues we've seen, what things we need to fix, and hopefully this will be an issue that is not an issue in the future. If we can get the tourism fund to operate more as a city-run financial rather than an event-based financial.
Question? Have you picked the committee yet?
We have had some internal discussions, and I'm going to have John.
Yeah, in response to this issue that's coming up, we're, I guess, Mohammed, Matt, I, and Kathy and Rachel have been meeting on an executive kind of committee to come together, take a look at how can we fit tourism into our operational framework. You know, how do we get on the fiscal year lined up? How do we get appropriate reserve? And we totally get it how events work, and you spend the money on the front end and you get it on the back, and it kind of just rolls over. And I think that communication, you know, improved communication, the operational aspects, financial aspects, administrative and permitting, all meeting regularly to make that happen is going to be a valuable, probably long overdue, frankly. But
I like that in terms of oversight. I really appreciate that. However, I would also request that one counselor sits in on that meeting, if that's okay, with the staff.
Just so the council knows, I did know about this and about the staff coming up with that.
Just as a liaison, just as helping oversight and working more as a team with the council and the staff.
So tourism is under administration, so that would be whatever choice you wanted to make there.
Now for meetings, I know initially the committee was looking to meet in the middle of the day. Like I think right now we have Thursdays at 1 o'clock kind of earmarked for weekly meetings. And so I don't want to inconvenience a council member if they need to work or be somewhere else in the middle of the day unless the request is to do meetings in the evening time.
Yeah, you never wait for a council member, for heaven's sakes. Right?
Some years ago, I asked if there could be an audit just of the tourism, and it was overruled. If we had a separate audit for the tourism every year by itself, would that have cut this problem down?
Maybe a little bit, but mainly it's about the 13 nights in the Halloween town are already starting to be planned.
No, I'm talking about, the numbers here came from the past. My question, which was an audit, was in the past, would that have cut that down if we had an audit earlier when we had this problem?
That's kind of what we're recommending is an ongoing kind of watch this thing and get it brought back to being ahead and having a prudent reserve instead of having to borrow every July.
I know, that's how we're gonna cure the problem. I asked if we had done this earlier, would it have solved the problem?
There are some possibilities that will likely come up during our executive committee that will address some of the revenue and expenses. We've also are planning to do an inventory review and a list of items that the city does actually own, so we have that list. That's something that the committee will go tour all the storage facilities to make sure that we have an ongoing list of all the inventory and everything that we have. And then this additional reporting for any revenue and expenses that come in that will be likely in more detail than what has been seen in the past.
I was just going to add that when you say audit, that there's different levels of audit. Most of the time we think about financial audits, but there's performance audits. There's all kinds of different audits out there to take a look at how things work and operate.
This was checking on how much time and obviously money that city workers put in on the tourism business, setting signs out, doing things like that. Is that included in your?
That would actually not be included in ours, because ours is kind of just the high level financial, just kind of, if you look at the whole financial report as a giant scorecard in general, we're just basically making sure that the numbers add up correctly and then.
Answer that question. I'm gonna go over here because they had their hands raised first. So.
No, I think so. And I before on the council too, when I heard the request of Councilor Topaz for an audit, I never really thought that an audit was needed. And I think as we're hearing that it's a kind of a different instrument. What I had always been interested in as a citizen, and I continue to be, and I think what we're hearing with this audit is that it's more of a technical types of things of how we're doing things. That an audit would be if we were looking at anything going on underhanded or whatever, and there's no evidence of that, and I don't think even previous audits would have shown that. What I do hear though is that we are definitely at a stage where we need to be more accountable in terms of our city understanding what that money is purchasing, what our inventory is, where it is, how it's being used, so that not an audit, but certainly some kind of control mechanism, management and control to make sure this type of thing is avoided in the past. Because it sounds like we're not losing money, the money's coming in, and the books are getting balanced. But it still behooves us to know, I guess maybe more itemization of just more specificity of what it is. So for instance, looking at things when we hear about an item, entertainment, is that paying for the bands? When we hear about purchase of product, which I saw quite a bit of in this last spring, product, what is product? So I think that type of thing, it doesn't require an audit, but certainly some more internal kind of control and oversight of it.
There's an ongoing issue with that as well, as in terms of what our tourism does for tourists and what it does for city people, our citizens.
Mm-hmm.
And so how do we divide that up in a sense where you ask the question where our city workers are out putting the cones out and doing this thing, well, how much is that? How much is Public Works doing that for our citizens, and how much are they doing it for tourism? I mean, the accountability just gets insane. And you have to play a guessing game and whatever, and to divide those funds up and be accountable in the way Mr. Topaz has asked the question, in terms of how much is going to tourism, and is that 100%, and is our city workers doing everything for tourism? My feeling is no. Our Public Works people are doing their work for both our citizens in the city and tourism. How it's a percentage, I have no idea, but that's for better pay grades to figure out.
So I'm gonna come to Councilor Chilton. Matt, you had one comment?
Just a quick comment
Okay.
on Councilor Topaz.
Yeah.
Several years ago, the council did request us to audit Public Works hours and keep track of how many hours they spent doing stuff. That data was recorded, I want to say 3 years ago or so, was given to the council and did nothing with it.
That'd be before my time, so.
It was before you were a councilor.
Okay.
So we have done that in the past. It can be done in the future. I think Councilor Morton brings up the exact point that I was gonna bring up, that in our committee that we had talked about initially was talking individually with you as council members as far as what events you consider tourism versus what events are considered city events.
Exactly.
And that helps alleviate some of the questions of how much Public Works does that you were alluding to.
Okay, Councilor Chilton.
Well, I just want to say that it's very apparent from this conversation that there is a lot of things that need to be cleaned up with tourism. There's a lot of loose ends everywhere. And so the finance issue is just the cherry on top. I mean, the list goes on. The inventory, there's no check system. The store, there's not a lot of check system with the ticket sales. There's a lot of issues that need to be cleaned up. And so for that reason, I'd like to request that a decision be voted on in our evening meeting under work session action items regarding directing staff to bring back an RFP for tourism production management.
Second. Okay, we can.
You're gonna bring that up tonight?
We can do
I would
that
like to
tonight.
add it to the action items tonight.
That would be tonight, yeah. That would be tonight, you can make a motion, just make it in action in your report.
In my report.
Yep.
Would your action item be requesting that be developed, or that you would actually have a proposed?
I would like to see staff seek RFPs while we are reconstructing the contract. There's a lot of work that needs to be done, and while the committee is also happening. So more of it as a whole. I think it gives us an opportunity to start, once we have the committee going, once we've cleaned up the contract, to actually have events in there that we actually want to be done under that contract, amongst other things. Then we have a clean slate for whoever takes the job from then on, with a very clear understanding of what we're expecting from them.
Yeah, and then, so how do we know what we're expecting of them until we actually have everything that we know? You're saying put it out right now, right?
Just to put feelers out there, yes.
That's what I'm hearing you say, and we have no idea what tourism.
But we do have a committee started, which is the plan right here, where we're gonna start to clean those things up. We
So-
already have ideas of what needs to be cleaned up.
And I'm not disagreeing with you, I'm just saying it's kind of like the blind leading the blind right now, as far as what are we actually asking for in that RFP proposal.
So we do have the RFP that we used last time.
Yes.
As a base, which has lists what you wanna see, and then I think the council would send that out, take a look at it, and maybe have it on next work session item, maybe sooner, depending on your sense of urgency, and let's talk about it, what you would wanna see. And we can frame up what you wanna do, what you don't wanna see, and
Yeah.
the announcement, typical process.
Yeah, so I'm just curious of what that would look like, and I'm just
I think we'll
confused.
find out.
Yeah, I'm just.
John just kind of said, but.
Yeah, the unclear thing is just what events, what things you wanna see in that contract.
Right.
And what you don't. So I think, and what Councilor Sheldon is requesting is that, if I'm reading it between the lines, but it's that the committee and the council talk about what events you want. And then once that's decided, then to go out for an RFP for those specific services and requirements.
And yeah, and other parts of the contract that need to be revamped.
Okay, I just don't wanna lose sight, and this is just me speaking for me, and I'm okay with whatever you council decides, but I need to speak a little bit on this. Is that our return on our investment for our citizens has been phenomenal. Things are happening around the city. I gotta say, the city has been playing a pretty crucial role in that, and that would be visitor and tourism, in what is going on down here. I would just like to state that for the record. Yes, I hear that it takes money, but that we're spending money, but what is the return on that money? Not what we're seeing, what is our community seeing out there on a Friday and Saturday night? Each and every business, it's called ROI, so.
And along with the RFP, we've gotta know what we already have. And I think a lot of us don't really understand what now Tina is doing, with other issues other than what was the 4th of July and 13 nights and, all the other things that are big that she's doing, Halloween Town, all of those things. What else? What are the things that we don't see that she's involved in, and how much revenue is it projecting and making, and where it gets going and whatever. I know she gives her reports, and I get lost in the reports. I think there's so much going on from report to report. We got to make certain that we know what's there now. That's just my point.
So we will get you if you act on it this evening, we will get you a copy of the current, or regardless, we'll get you the copy of the current RFP that was last time that has, and the agreement, and move forward as we
And then
direct.
I will motion in my report is where we're at, not action items, correct?
You absolutely have every right to do that.
Okay.
And the evening session is where the entire council decided that we would do all of our voting.
I just thought maybe it could be added to the work action items.
Well, it could be if you wanted it as a discussion topic for our work session. Even our work session stuff, our Habitat for Humanity, this report will probably get adopted. I don't know, I haven't looked at my evening session.
The audit doesn't get adopted per se.
But it gets, yes, so all those get kicked up to the evening. So that's just where this council decided to make its decisions, is in the evening. We all did that, actually. as
Right,
we-
I was just asking if
Yeah.
you're telling me I need to make it in my report, or if you're gonna give me an option to make a motion at a different time during the session.
No, it-
Work session action items is what she's talking about.
Oh, okay, kick it up for a work session item.
So we can vote on it?
Okay, yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you for hanging with us. Yeah, sorry. Thank you for hanging with us.
Just real quick.
We bird walk.
No problem. I can just interject real quick, just one thing about that fund balance and kind of why it is where it is. If you want to look at more detail, it's on page 49. The majority of the reason it got to that negative for 2020 was because the revenues were down so much, and I'm guessing the pandemic probably played a role in that. So it's just a matter of like the budget being projected correctly, but it was a tough year to project a budget because how do you anticipate the loss of tourism revenue really to that extent?
That's an interesting observation. The decline in the hotel revenue is down, and it's not just because the hotels aren't full, it's because there's the one hotel, they only have 2 hotels. Or massive hotel, it's kind of a huge revenue. Anyway, but it used to be 130,000, and it's pretty steadily declined since then, and that's, they change their business model, having longer term stays where they're ineligible for it, or can't, or other organizations are handing out hotel vouchers, and those aren't taxable, so that impacts us here in the city too. So it makes the lift for tourism and events, revenue that much higher to get that extra revenue. So.
I have a question, I think I've seen it, but I don't remember. Over on the mill site, we have a operation that grows marijuana. And I know we get monies from permits and licenses, but they were supposedly running rents. Do you have any accounting for how much money the rents came in? And it gets complicated because we should be getting a monthly fee because they're now into a purchase agreement. Do we have any funds or numbers on monies coming from the marijuana business?
I'd have to defer to management on that in terms of where, if it's in the general ledger, it's definitely accounted for in this report. And we could potentially be doing transaction sampling on it, but without looking specifically at it.
You don't have a specific line item then?
Not off the top of my head. There is the state, there's the the marijuana revenue that the city gets that's passed on from the state.
Not the same.
Yeah, okay.
Because I think I saw that they pay fees and things like that. I was wondering about other parts. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, between the contract payment and the community benefit fees, it's $16,080 a month. They're fully paid.
And that goes into the community development fund. Councilor Topaz, it's likely not gonna be line itemed here because the auditors will categorize everything into main categories. So you're not gonna see specific ACSP mortgage or lease revenue or rent. You're gonna see miscellaneous revenue, grants, and so they're more broad categories. That way the audit isn't 500 pages long.
Okay, well, I've seen audits of 500 pages, I had to drift through those, so not an unusual finding.
So what was that number that you cited, a monthly payment?
16,080.
Thank you.
At one time, it was supposed to be 30,000 a month when they were under the rental agreement. started at 10, 15, 20, then 30. And that's,
Yeah, and that was at a $3 million note, not a 1.5.
And then we got sued, right?
We got sued.
I trust that,
Freaking-
that our administration is making sure that our they're not our tenant any. but
Yeah,
those
Mortgage is
are-
being paid on a.
Mortgage is being paid, they still are, okay, well, anyway, that if they owe us something, if they weren't paying us, I would believe that we would be alerted to the fact. I trust our administration, finance people to,
Yes.
make us aware of that. And so if we haven't heard it, we must be getting what we are due by the agreement. I don't know why that continues to be asked.
well, until we have proof, we can ask.
Okay.
And we've hidden it, so we've gotta dig into that to find out definitely, so, no problem.
Okay, any other questions for our auditor here? So the bank stuff was just basically a transfer, the software, the US Bank, the Wells Fargo accounts, getting them transferred over and all that.
It wasn't transferring the accounts, it's the accounting system that was not as easy as I was anticipating in transferring over. It meant that the bank reconciliations were not done on a timely basis. Like, kept having issues going back and forth and reconciling. You would think $10 here should be $10 here, and it didn't quite end up that way. So it took a lot longer for us to prepare the audit documents, which in turn is why Connor and his accounting firm had that kind of write-up. But all that has been fixed and corrected now, and this next audit will be on time.
I was gonna say, yeah, when do we get to see that?
And keep in mind, usually this report comes to you in January.
Yeah.
And it's July now, or August.
It'll be there,
yeah. So.
Well, we started next year's already.
We're already starting next year, so.
In process.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, we're gonna take, we need to take our 2-minute break. Amy, I know you wanna come up here right now, but we actually have our 10-minute break that we need.
Right. I don't want you all falling asleep on me.
And Mike, go stretch your legs, run around the block, do, you know.
We're out to.
So, why?
All right, so,
Yes.
Oh, exactly as I was just.
I'll jump to court.
hey, be ready to go, because I need to be, we're, Rubino, executive session by 4, so we're gonna be posting it.
I'm gonna be short and sweet.
Finance and court should be.
All right.
Sort of like me.
Let's. You have 2 items.
Yeah, it won't take me long for either one.
Good.
Still,
As I mean,
recording everybody.
All.
I know, I've been eyeing this forever.
No, it's the problem. If they're there, I'll eat it. I golfed this morning too. That little bit exercise.
Anyway.
I used to go to the they say I owe you Doug Jerkinson's large sale in Oregon. The sub traffic. Yeah, it's vicious. That's what's going in. He took a couple spots over to
Yes.
Yeah, but now I do it in Canada.
Well.
Famous one there.
Hey, I was.
Very interesting, aren't they?
They are, yes.
I'm actually gonna read this pre, and then I'm gonna also make a
We can put you in a pole out there in the cornfield.
Copies of this.
It's cold at night though.
Yeah,
sure.
But no brain, so I wouldn't feel, I wouldn't process
If I
it.
only had a brain.
Counselor Tokaz, have you been to Jim and Kat's farm recently?
Not today, but yesterday, I'm in the repair business.
Oh, good.
I've been able to kick off more water dust before you can imagine.
Nice work. I was wearing their hat while I was golfing this morning. And I thought to myself, I gotta go out there.
Oh, yeah, it's quite a go. One of the things that's been most interesting about it is the people who just come out to get away from the city, not really do anything, they're just warm.
See, I actually was thinking of trying to.
Your little kids do that.
Oh, it's such a pretty place. The kids love it. And just to look at the farm animals.
Love that.
You know, so
That's
just
fabulous.
Well, the other thing, they've got some big old tractors and stuff like that. Amazingly, little kids wanna come up and stand by a tractor.
Great idea.
That's what
Tell
Okay.
Judy about that.
We are pressed for time, we're gonna shoot for 4 because we have to go into an executive session at 4. So we have another attorney that's gonna come in. So our next item is financial municipal court semi-annual report, Matt and Amy.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
I didn't do a written one because I don't have that much to report, which is good.
Yes.
Because things are going very smoothly. We are back to full-time, I mean, we had been court full-time, but actual full capacity. With the doors open and all the chairs there. That was about a week or 2 ago. It was very weird to see all the chairs, but it's nice because we can be quicker. You know, we don't have to bring people in groups of 5. So we've had 2 jury trials scheduled, so the jurors were in here. All was good, so we're ready to go. Neither one happened because one, the defendant came, well, he didn't come to court. The police officers went and invited him to attend his trial, but then he was very intoxicated. So we couldn't have a trial with an intoxicated defendant. So that one resolved, and then the other one, the individual pled guilty the morning of. But we are fully operational, so that has been really exciting. We have just recently fully executed the LEDS 2020 transition, and that is Oregon State Police's database system. For the last couple of years, I've been trying to get us on doing the electronic submissions to Oregon State Police and DMV, instead of doing it all snail mail. So like when somebody has a conviction, Melanie and April would take their fingerprint cards and snail mail it to Oregon State Police. Of course, with COVID, Oregon State Police has been really backlogged, people working from home. So this transition took a little bit longer, but we're there, and so now all of our convictions get done electronically, they're instant, they show up on people's criminal records. DMV, for, all through COVID, we just were not getting responses, calling, saying, where are you guys, please, we're ready to go live. Nobody would respond, and we finally got them to respond. And so we are hopefully gonna finish that soon, in the next month or 2. So that's been a big step in the right direction. And then with the police department going to their electronic citations, that is gonna basically be the culmination of the court getting in this century. So, yeah, so it'll be really, really great, because once the police officers, I believe how it works is they take somebody's driver's license and they scan it on the handheld device. And then that auto-populates their information, their address, and then they type in the violation, and then it prints out one of those long tickets. And then our system then imports that, so they all work together. So the staff will no longer have to hand type the name, the citation number, the address, all of that. So it'll be significant time saver.
Less errors too, I would.
And less errors, yeah. Yeah. I took notes on my phone. The other piece that we had talked about last time was the truancy court, and that hasn't really gone anywhere. The school district, it's my impression, was not excited about, I think they perceive it as punitive. And So I'm hoping that as the school year starts going, we can touch base again and reach out. I am also the judge in Gladstone now. They have a truancy court, and that will get going in September. So I'm gonna see how that goes and so maybe have some perspective from that to share with our school district here. Because as you know, I think there will be a lot of kids who are lost, and we need to get them back, and the parents back. So I don't perceive it as punitive. I can see how getting cited to court would be, but it's more of like a outreach. And I think working with parents and kids to have expectations met and
Getting the family involved.
yeah. And sometimes you just need the hammer, the threat of it. So, yeah. Any questions for me?
Couple comments. So one, I think when you were mentioning about the truancy court not being punitive, was it a year ago or what? When over a year ago, I think when you first really presented that and talked about that, and I was very impressed by the approach you had. Is that it was not to be punitive, but it was to assist families. And I think that one of the issues maybe that the school district might be a little wary a little bit now is because I think in some ways COVID, that students were not involved, coming to class, at least in the Hillsborough district where I work, and I think I've heard similar things, is that in some ways there was much more communication with families than there had been in some ways. I mean, in some ways we were peering into families' homes through being online, but through food deliveries and other types of things. And there were actually, I think, some better relationships that were developed with some families, not all. So I think, I hope that you do approach the school district again about that and capitalize, because we do have families in need. And the second was, are you commenting, or it was Sam Erskine, the prosecutor?
I think he was submitting the written.
Yeah, he submitted it, and okay, so I just wanted to say, and he's not here, right? But I was really impressed by the fact that he's requesting feedback about the job he's doing. He has that, if acceptable to the city, like to distribute forms. So I think that very much impressed me, that he is reaching out to seek that kind of input from us, and I think that's admirable. So I hope to also meet him in person. But
he really does a great job. He's very thorough.
Yeah.
And he's a great advocate. You know, our defense attorneys are also really great. We have 3 right now. Lance Caranto, Lucy Heil, and Ross Dennison. And they work really hard for the defendants who they represent. And they don't do other circuit court work. And so they don't have the demands that the circuit court defense attorneys have. I mean, huge caseloads, and they just don't get really that much time with people. And so basically all of the attorneys who I think representing this, the city, but also the defendants, are really great.
And are those attorneys private practice, or are they associated with a public defense organization? How?
They are, good question, they're private practice. And most of them, well, I think all 3 of them just do municipalities. At this point, Lance Caranto is moving up from the Eugene area. So he has done criminal defense in Eugene, and so now does defense for Gladstone, Oregon City, and St. Helens. And I think maybe Scappoose as well. Ms. Heil just became the judge in Malala, and she's the prosecutor for Canby. And then the defense attorney for St. Helens and Oregon City. So yeah, it's sort of a specialized field for us, where we wear different hats, and we interact with each other in different roles. But we have, really good working relationships. So, yeah. And Mr. Erskine, he's the prosecutor, and his wife for, I think, Troutdale, Fairview. His wife is a prosecutor for McMinnville. So they've become pretty specialized as well. Yeah. We're all independent contractors, so because the cities don't have enough for a full-time.
Right, yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, any other questions?
Just to note that because your services agreement, and is, I guess, a forewarning that we've been talking, and you'll have something to look at as far as an amended agreement here at some point fairly soon, so.
I didn't know if it was appropriate to bring it up there, but yeah, John and I have been talking about that, so. I'd like to stick around for Matt's presentation, if that's okay.
Oh, I don't know if I have much
You weren't saying anything outside.
No, the only thing I would mention is, I always like to include a few pictures, so in my report, I included the revenue and expenses. You'll see a little dip up in the expenses for this year, that's because of the purchase of the e-ticketing software system, so.
Okay.
How do you plead?
No contest.
Going to Alcatraz.
And then,
Sand Island.
Our city prosecutor, as you saw, provided a written report. Since we were first doing in-person meetings, I didn't think they would want to drive all the way out here for 10 minutes and then drive all the way back, but Amy never got my email, so she just showed up, so. Appreciate that. But in Sam's report, he does request, if it's okay with council, to elicit feedback from those that he works with and those surrounding him, if that's okay with the city council to.
Absolutely.
I'm sure he'd be more than happy to share those results on his quarterly reports.
Yeah, sure. That's a good idea. It's a great idea. I don't think I can do it as the judge. I don't think. I'm gonna guess there's probably a lot of people who are not happy with me. Their name's probably in the caption of a case, so.
One's in the inmate roster.
Yeah. Can't make everybody happy as a judge.
Good.
Thank you. Have a great summer. You can come by court whenever you want. Never a dull moment. Yeah.
Okay,
Take care.
Judge Lingren, thank you. All right, next item on the agenda is Building Division Semi-Annual Report. Michael D. Roya.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I just want to say it's great to be in person.
Yes.
It is great. Okay. I know we're pressed on time, so I'll jump right into it. So yeah. There we go. So it is our report from January to June, end of June. The data that I pulled, you'll see that it's a 12/28 date on that. The only purpose for that was the cutoff for my last report landed me on 12/27, so I wanted to make sure you guys had all the numbers that we've had since last time I've reported to you. And so since that time, we've had 623 permits issued from our office. 241 of those were plan reviews performed in our building department office. That doesn't count all the plan reviews, which is on the second slide, or the second part of that slide there. You can see all the different types of reviews that are done, and those are done by different individuals in different departments. But in the building department, we did 241, as you guys recall. And we've hired John Hicks, our inspector, which has been a great addition to our department since January and allowed us to get 3,083 inspections done inside of the building department. That's 118 a week on average. And also just, with our Heidi and Christina up at the front, they're keeping track of permits, keeping things pushing forward. Our hold box has been emptier than ever these days because they just keep reminding people that they've got business with us to take care of, and people get through. So we appreciate that. And again, I just want to make sure, some of those, the numbers I'm giving you aren't reflecting every single thing that's done with regards to the building permits, but that information is up there. Next slide, please. So one thing I wanted to highlight, there we go. One thing I did want to highlight while we were talking today was just the collaboration between departments. So I want to say a special thanks to the Works Director, John, Rachel especially, who's not here anymore, our city planner, because we've been meeting on a regular basis to try and better our processes and provide better services for our customers. And so what that has come down to recently is we've started cross-training John Hicks, our inspector, to do not only the building inspections that he's qualified to do, but also to do planning inspections within subdivisions. And this helps out quite a bit with the contractor and inspector relationship, because he's able to educate them, he's able to help them foresee problems and apply those standards now that he sees those and has been trained up on those. And that's the kind of culture we try to have at the building department, is one of educating, and that's, we've found, is the best way to get compliance out of people. And this method of cross-training fosters that, because again, he's able to go out and provide before the inspection, right, before he says you failed because you didn't do it right, he's able to go out there and say, hey, I see a problem coming out here that you might want to address now before you do your final. And just with the way that works out in the field, the contractors appreciate that. They always like to get heads up on anything that's going to delay them. And so this helps them to do that, because he's able to provide guidance with regards to planning matters. So again, I want to just thank the other departments for working together. Another thing that's come out of that is our, and I'll touch on this just a little bit as we move forward, but is the plan review services that we're looking to start providing, digital plan review services, and I'll touch on that here in just a little bit more. Next slide, please. We've had the 2021 code updates. I did a little presentation on this a while ago, and we are still working with legal counsel to get some updated code language, so we're still working through that. We are still in our transition period, or otherwise known as the grace period. But some of the things we've done since last time I've talked to you is we've taken the time, the 6-month period from April 1st to September, to educate again, go out there and be proactive with the contractors, designers, builders that we work with on a regular basis, to try and give them a heads up on what they're facing, what they have to account for as they think about their designs going forward. And this includes, again, just simple conversations. We've also brought in bulletins out in the field with us to hand out to them that have pictures and diagrams and different narratives that they can follow to help, and just being available for them to try and talk those things out. And that is it on the code update. Next slide, please. So training and continued education, real important stuff for us. We have credentials that we have to maintain through continued education. This last year was difficult to do that, but I'm happy to report since my last report, with electronic platforms becoming as popular as they have, we've had opportunities to get some additional training in. Some of the ones I wanted to highlight, John and I are in the middle of, because of the code adoptions, the state has created a series of videos and training classes that we're required to take in order to maintain our certification, so we're in the middle of those. Christina also took a permit technician class. This was to expand her knowledge with regards to code administration, the role of permit technician, terminology, which is huge in the construction industry. And so it's just led for her to be able to provide better customer service as well. And that is it on that part. And here's the fun part. This is the one I like talking about. So E-Plan Review Project. So we are moving forward with that project. Some of the services we're looking at providing through this project is an online customer portal for document upload and download of approved plans. One of the things that we found when we reached out and talked to contractors is the only reason they're printing paper is to bring them to us for review. And so we're kind of the cog in that. And so we're moving towards an electronic day or electronic age, and moving in along with that, we are going to try and provide them services to where they can upload and then download the approved documents. And then for the plan reviewers, there's some really neat functions, if you will, I guess, of the programs for marking up, making comments, automated reports that are generated based on those comments. It also allows for concurrent plan review. Currently, we work in a linear fashion, passing from one department to another, and we are having conversations about it looks like to maybe all perform plan reviews at once, reducing quite a bit of time for the applicant. So right now we are looking at software options. We've pretty much got I think we've got the software nailed down of what we're after, what we're looking for, the price range we're within, and now we're moving into where we're getting equipment priced out, what appropriate equipment we're going to use. So in terms of timelines, the software itself, I'm told takes about 6 weeks to implement. So from the time that we pull the green light on that, it'll be about 6 weeks. Procuring equipment, that'll be just as we all know, it takes time to get some of that stuff these days, but as soon as we have our list together, we'll start procuring equipment. And just also wanted to talk a few of the projects we got going on in the city right now. So Greystone Estates, this is the one over by the old hospital, DMV area. Elk Ridge, that's up on the hill, phase 6. There's actually a phase 7 as well that's just being proposed at this point. And then we got Forest Park, that's Rich Bailey's subdivision over off of Sykes. And Emerald Meadows, which is about ready to be built, or that one's maybe 2 homes, I think, still need a final inspection on that. And then that place is completely built out. Yeah. We got the grocery outlet. In fact, they just passed their fire alarm final today. So they are well on their way to getting occupancy. Their anticipation is for August. And then of course we were talking with Carl today, and that was the 7th Street container homes, and that's them in place on 7th Street. It even looks different today than it did the day I took that photo. And then a couple of other ones that are coming down the road. We are just getting started with the high school renovation and review for some of the phases for that project. And then the Gable Road apartments, they are slated to have approved plans sometime here in August. So we were waiting for a response back on some last minute comments that we had to them. And yeah, and so I'd open it up for questions. Hopefully that was fast enough. All right.
I thought I read something about Popeyes on here.
Maybe not in my report. I do know that there was a land use decision for Popeyes right in front of the grocery outlet. And they have reached out to us, the contractor has reached out. So yeah, they've got some momentum going. So I anticipate they'll be wanting to roll pretty quick on that.
So, I mean, all this, uploading all this stuff, so I'm the planning commission liaison, I got the role of the high school stuff. So you need to have a pretty big screen. I mean,
it's funny.
I mean, because I was laying those out on my floor trying to keep my puppy from chewing them up. And I'm looking at this, and I couldn't imagine looking at this on like an iPad or
Sure. Yeah, and so I did a little bit of research on that, and when the concept was new, yes, this was the model. Get a big screen, okay. That's what you need. But what they found as things have become more refined and learning from mistakes and stuff, that's not the way our eyes work.
Right.
And so what I hear is that the average screen size for a plan reviewer is going to be about 33-inch screen. And so
that's about the size of them.
yeah. So a pretty good sized computer monitor.
Yeah.
But yeah, not the big screens that some people had immediately went out and got. In fact, I know I've seen a few folks that have them up and they're just black now because that just doesn't work that way. So
you're not going to be suffering too much eye strain.
No.
Good. That's fascinating.
Michael, go ahead.
Yeah, I appreciate your report. Very straightforward, precise, clean, and not drawn out.
There you go.
So now you have hazardous mitigation plan.
Yeah, I can be quick on that one. This one is actually something that you guys, this council voted on in 2019. I think it was July of 2019. The multi-jurisdiction hazard mitigation plan. This is a collaboration between all the cities, all 7 cities within Columbia County and then Columbia County themselves. And what this is to go out to FEMA under the National Flood Insurance Protection Program. And this boosts funding in 3 ways to us. There's hazard mitigation, there is 3 programs that are available for these funds. It basically is when an event happens in our city, we are an NFIP participator, so FEMA will come in and provide, I believe it's 75% of funding to rebuild the community. What this plan does is an approved plan in place allows to bump that up 15% when we have funded when we need funding from a disaster, and specifically to be used to mitigate further disasters from causing problems. So the example would be like in Vernonia, where they've had flooding, and they actually utilized this very program. They not only built back, but they built above the floodplain. And so they got additional funding in order to support that. And it's not just for floods. There's actually several different aspects that are identified in the report: fire, flood, earthquake. I think the only one that was not applicable to us was tsunami. And so this was actually adopted. You guys, well, I mean, I don't know if everybody was on here at this time, but the council adopted it. It went back for review to be approved by the federal government, and it's come back down again. There were some slight modifications that were added to it, basically. The county added all of their public outreach events. We had only listed the ones that we had just for the city of St. Helens, but they went ahead and added all of the county events as well as part of our public outreach to requirement for the for this program. And then on top of that, we wanted to update staff names that were included in the committees and different things. And so that's what's up for vote tonight, to adopt the plan. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Basically re-adopt it.
It's basically re-adopting it. It is, yeah.
It's updated every 5 years and.
It is updated every 5 years. The county, Sean Brown with Emergency Management, has said that in the next round, they plan on utilizing a consultant firm in order to do this. This is quite a big undertaking for, I think it was him. He'll say emergency management, but I think it was him. So.
Committee consists, the hazard mitigation committee consists of how many?
Are you talking about so there's a steering committee, that was the original committee from our organization. And we just went through and identified the assets that need to be listed, the hazards that needed to be listed. And then there's a follow-up committee that's listed at the very end. And that, we are responsible at that point of where funding is available for the mitigation plans that we have. We're responsible for overseeing that and kind of keeping the report, or keeping the plan updated as we move through the next cycle.
Okay, I guess, yeah, I was looking at the resolution that was passed, it refers to hazard mitigation committee.
Yes, that's.
Committee team and the hazard.
Correct, yeah, and that's
coordinator.
And that's the team that's gonna follow up for the next 5 years on I believe it was a semi-annual, or
And that's the city, no, that's the county.
no, that was the city.
That's the city team.
Yeah, and we're responsible to keep our annex up to date.
So I guess I have a question, like, what's the membership of that
Of,
committee?
oh, it should be, I apologize, I don't have a copy right in front of me, but it should be listed on the.
Okay, it's further down.
I think if you scroll down, it's listed on there.
Okay.
It has John on there, myself is on there,
You're right,
Mohammed is on there, I think.
I did, okay, and I do recall.
I don't remember everybody that's on
Thank
it, to
you,
be honest.
no, yeah, it's right there in front of me, all I have to do is scroll down.
It's memorized.
All right.
Appreciate it, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions?
Good job. We're gonna go ahead and relieve everybody here
Thank you, guys.
that doesn't need to be here.
What time would you like to get back?
7. Okay. Yep.
Are we going to take the rest of the agenda items
We are.
to tonight?
To tonight, yes.
So,
So I'm gonna go ahead and adjourn this council work session. We will be going to ORS 192.6602E, real property transaction, and H, consulting with counsel, potential litigation as previously announced.